right, and we are back. All 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 right, and we are back. Hey, how you doing? Welcome. All right, and we are back. And today we're doing something quite a bit different today, because this is a live stream, everybody. Yes, welcome to the live stream for some religious content. Hey, we already got somebody in here. How you doing? Sylvia, you have been one of the longest subscribers that I've had. Now is a great time to show you some appreciation. You've recommended me some incredible content over the last 2 years or a year or so. I don't even know how long it's been, but you've recommended me some great content. And you know what? I don't do enough of this stuff here. I want to make it a little bit more consistent. So I think the live streams may help. This may be a reoccurring thing. So shout outs to you. Uh, how do I pronounce this? Palichan? What's up? What's going on? I don't know if you're man, woman, I don't know, but how are you doing out there, person? I appreciate you. But yeah, we're gonna be starting off with some uh a recommended video. This was recommended by another viewer here. It is called Who is Yahweh? Now, here is my slight and I know I had to say it once, but here's my slight issue with this one video, and I want to get it out there now. Um, as far as saying the name, because I know like God is a placeholder because we're not supposed to say his name in vain. So I might just say God during this reaction, but shout outs to the creator. Make sure you go subscribe to Esoterica. We're gonna go ahead and check this video out. And if you have any other recommended videos, make sure you put them down below. That way we can go ahead and watch those today as well. I don't know how long I'll be streaming, but I got at least like 3 or 4 videos pulled up, and I should be free pretty much for this day. So, guys, if you have anything to recommend, comment it. And outside of that, we are going to go ahead and get started with the video, guys.
The birth, survival, twilight, and ultimate demise of divine beings seems to follow its own evolutionary patterns, such that some gods endure without significant cultic or theological change for centuries,
Okay.
while others blaze onto the world stage only to burn themselves up into extinction almost.
Oh, guys, also, I do have to say, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video out there if anybody else is interested in this type of content out there. You guys know how it is. It's live, so I don't have all the cool the cool buttons and stuff to do right now, but I will be working on that. Wait, what is happening right now? Oh, wrong bit. There we go.
As soon as they appeared. Indeed, a given god must perform a careful balancing act to persist much through human time,
Okay.
marked by seemingly unending upheavals. On the one hand, a divine being must have a definite enough quality to attract and maintain worshippers, and yet, at the same time, such a god cannot be so rigid or its cult so conservative that it cannot endure significant adaptation and change,
True.
the only surety of our mundane world. Too far in one direction makes a god unappealing. Too far in the other dooms them given religious fashion and change, frankly. And surely, through the eons, some gods have adapted and many gods have gone extinct.
Okay.
Though one god has proven to be rather successful, oddly enough, not that that makes them a better god or even a real god, beyond all
Whoa.
reasonable historical expectation. In fact, this god, whose simple name means something like the one that exists, emerged.
Now, as far as I know, and even in the Bible, they do reference other gods. So even if you don't believe in them, they may be real. I'm not. That's kind of like the whole thing. It's like they could all it all could very well exist. And personally, I definitely believe. Let me growing up Christian, I believe in God. But then, like, just growing up, like, seeing other people and other beliefs and things like that, it's like I'm not opposed to the idea that their beliefs are also 100% real. Like, and obviously they have the same amount of faith in it that I have in mine. So it's like I'm not going to be able to convince them about that because I don't think I could be easily swayed into just believing uh just like denouncing my religion or anything like that, or anything I kind of like at least initially grew up on, but learning more, yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just the way he said it. I don't know. The traditional Christian view is that those gods are actually demons, false angels. Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I guess if that's the traditional view, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna just go ahead and agree with that. Uh, but I can see how that goes. I can see the vision there.
Emerged from the sands of Bronze Age obscurity to eventually become not just a national god, but, in the end, simply the god for the overwhelming majority of the world's population now. But just how did a tribal warrior storm god, Yahweh, go from being a god, a minor god among gods much more ancient and much more powerful, enduring up till then at least, to simply becoming God, the sole God of all that is in the mythology of billions?
I
If
mean, that's like asking how did the first guy become, king, or how did the most famous king become king, even though that there were kings before him and kings after him. There's gonna be people who just, or there's gonna be things that just rise above. It's kind of I'm gonna be honest, that kind of just like upped my faith a little bit. Because it's like, okay, he started off not as the most powerful, but then now he is like, okay, well, kind of shows that maybe I was right. I don't know what to tell you guys. You know, I pick, we got the right one. We picked the right one,
if you're
guys.
interested in magic and hermetic philosophy, alchemy,
That
or
is a
Kabbalah,
that's sarcastic humor, guys. I don't want anybody else from any other religions coming at me in the comments because we are going to be looking at other religions today too. We're just starting off with this
or the history of the occult, make sure to subscribe and check out my other topics on contents and esotericism.
one. Okay. Yeah, guys, make sure you subscribe. Check out the Esoterica channel. Great content so far. I'm liking this video, so give him a bunch of subscriptions. Tell him that I sent you. See if he'll subscribe to me because that will be pretty freaking cool.
Also, if you want to support my work of providing accessible, scholarly, and free content on topics here in esotericism, here on YouTube, freely accessible, I'd hope you consider supporting my work on Patreon or with a one-time donation with a super thanks option, or perhaps you'd
Mm,
buy a shirt over at our merch store on the channel.
that's true, guys. I also have a merch. Uh, Normally, I would be able to just put the link somewhere here, but this is a live stream, so it's probably in the description below. Also, I do have a uh, Patreon. Check that out. Justin Sledge is the goat when it comes to religious scholarship. Okay, is he the goat? He actually just made a new video on last Friday. Yeah, he did. So I might check that one out today as well. We're starting off with this one here just because this was recommended by a viewer. So we just want to check this one out, and then you know, d- we'll probably end up going to that one. So uh, if you could just type the name of that video in the comments, and we'll go ahead and get to that one. Um, I'll put this on the list for the videos. But thank you. I appreciate the TTYL. That's a great name.
But now, let's turn to a god that all of us know of, but none of us really know much about.
Okay.
Yahweh, are the one that exists, the deity at the core of the Abrahamic faiths and beyond.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica.
Sledge, I heard you were the GOAT. Come on now. Give me some good stuff here.
Where
You
we
already did.
explore
I'll
the
be honest.
arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.
Okay. Ooh, I like this intro. It's calming. I knew that was gonna see when you listen to enough music, you kind of just know where you believe that the beat and everything is gonna go based off the melody. And I actually timed it right. This is actually why I'm probably one of like the best reactors out there. Not too many people would catch that. What is happening right now?
As you might
Okay.
imagine, this is an episode I've been wanting to make for a long time, and I've been absolutely dreading having to make it for even
How did
longer.
Yahweh become
The
God?
importance of
The
an episode on
origins
Yahweh
of
is
monotheism.
basically
It's a bit
self-evident, but the
long, but if you
challenge
like
is
it,
to
stuff,
making
check
it
it out.
should
Okay.
be equally self-evident.
I'll
The
go ahead and
literature on
check
this
this out.
topic,
This is the first video I've ever watched from this channel, by the way. So I'm just now, I don't know how this guy's style is. I don't know like what his, essence of this videos are, but so far, I am enjoying it. Let me just see if I can get a slightly better. All right, that might be better for you guys. All right, but yeah. So yeah, we'll check. We're gonna finish this full video and then we're gonna check him out for the second one. And I appreciate you for throwing that in the comments there.
is vast, utterly vast. It's spread over a dozen or so languages, performed by ingenious
Probably Yahweh, Persian coin of note winged chariot throne. Okay, I'm noting it.
specialists with an encyclopedic grasp of the material, and yet an entire argument or series of arguments can hinge on a single suffix of an inscription. I'm looking at you, Kuntilich, a Druid pronomial suffix problem. And of course, with Yahweh being at the core of the Abrahamic religions, historicizing such a being can easily be taken as an assault on the very core of those religions. If you
True.
historicize Yahweh, everything else might just disappear into the air. And yet, that's the task at hand. So it should go without saying that virtually everything I'm going to say in this episode can and would be taken to task by an army of specialists, and can in no way taken to be definitive, because there is simply that little consensus among
Mm.
the specialists.
It's so funny because for a quick second, I thought he was going to say, nothing I say in this video can be disproven by any religious scholars. I thought that's where he was going to go with it. He went the opposite way. He said, people aren't going to, not everyone's going to 100% believe the things I say because there's always going to be a little bit of that, that little bit of kind of like that doubt there. So I appreciate him for saying that. I thought he was going to say the other thing, though. I thought he was going to go the complete opposite way.
But I'd rather hazard an episode on the topic than just throw my hands up and say, oh, it's utterly frustrated by the difficulty and the complicatedness and the specialization of the topic.
Yeah.
Better, as that famous saying of Beckett goes, ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail again, fail better. So here's to fail.
Hey, shout outs to that. That's a good saying. Now, there's another one that says, if you fall off the horse, get back on. If you fall down 5 times, get back up 6 times. It turns out people have been saying the same stuff for millennia now. So, hey, humans, man, we might need to get some new lines or something, but that was a good one. I like that one. We're just saying the same thing in different ways.
Better in the name of public education. Also, on a personal note, using the name Yahweh is just simply an academic attempt to vocalize the name of the Israelite tribal god, and not some attempt to actually utter a magical divine name, much less take such a name in vain. In fact, public education is just about the furthest thing from my mind when I think about doing something in vain. And lastly, this is an academic channel, and I check my religious commitments at the door And historical facts and evidence are what matter here,
Okay.
not my personal beliefs. And really, when we allow our faith to dictate our history, we really just betrayed both.
Oh wow.
I guess I'll just
Yo,
come out of the gate with it.
I
The
like that because uh, like me myself, I I love history, but I also have my personal convictions and personal beliefs. But I'm not gonna just allow those to just keep me ignorant from history because I believe in something. Like, yes, I believe in Yahweh, the Christian God. I grew up that way, but doesn't mean I'm gonna not learn about Shintoism or anything else. So, when it comes to those history of things, like obviously, I already said this. Just learning about something isn't going to change my religion just like on a snap. It's gonna definitely be you know, it's gonna take a little bit more than just that for me. If you want to hear the opposite view to the one that Esoterica presents, you should watch Inspiring Philosophies. Uh, what is the polytheism in the Bible and Israel's revolutionary monotheism after his two videos? Okay, perfect. Star that one. So we got more recommendations already. I love it. Look how many we already got. What's that? 3 recommended videos. So now we're gonna learn about some another guy who has an opposing opinion after this video, though.
origins of Yahweh are utterly unknown. The name may appear first in the 14th century BCE of an enemy list of Amenhotep III, in a similar but later list in the 13th century BCE by Ramses II as the Shasu of Yahweh or the Shasu of Yahu. It's not quite clear how that was pronounced. The Shasu were semi-nomadic pastoralists, typically associated with raiding and general big brigandry. The Egyptian name for their name actually indicates their nomadic existence, to roam about, while the name taken up into Semitic and Hebrew means something like to raid or to plunder. So there's a clue what they were. While the name Yahweh does seem to appear here, it also seems to be functioning primarily as a toponym rather than as a theonym.
Okay.
But that other Shasu in the list are also associated with the region of Seir, it's a mountain range in the southwestern Transjordan, is probably going to prove salient here in just a moment. Whether the Shasu were Proto Israelites isn't clear, but it seems reasonable to think that there was probably some connection and ditto with the Hyperu and the social then ethnic groups, the Hebrews, that began as a social group, not an ethnic group, who were also associated with brigandry. So this is a fun origin story. Israel first appears to enter history on the Merneptah stele. He's the son of Ramses II, like his 13th son, where he claims victory such that the Canaan has been plundered into every sort of woe. Ashkelon has been overcome.
Mhm.
Gezer has been captured. Yanoam is made non-existent. Israel is laid waste and his seed is not. Huru is become a widow because of Egypt. It's perhaps worth mentioning here that the Egyptian determinative on Ashkelon, Yanoam, and Gezer indicate foreign city. This is the triple mountain determinative, whereas Israel has the foreign ethnic group determinative, though, to be sure, the use of determinatives by Egyptian scribes can be all over the place, kind of arbitrary.
Mhm.
The southerly geographic placement may also be important, though. Note
Quick question, and I know this might sound random, but do we really know the nuances of Egyptian language? Because, obviously we thanks to what was it, that stone that they found in ancient times, the I can't think of the name of it, but you guys know where they translated it from Egyptian and like that to Greek, and then that kind of proto Greek language that they had, and then they figured that out. But do they know like really like the nuances of the language? Like, were there any like characters that you put in sometimes next to each other? The Rosetta Stone. There you go. I knew somebody knew it. I love you guys. But do they know, like, sometimes you want to say slang, and I'm sure slang has always been around in every language throughout history. Like, what's like the Egyptian slang in hieroglyphs like, Like what if sometimes they're saying things but in shorthand, or like they're saying things that it means this, but it actually means this, Like we do that in English so often that I just wonder. And we even sometimes do it in writing, when you're just writing sarcastically or anything like that. Did they have sarcastic hieroglyphs in, in Egypt? Like, I don't know. It feels like this might be some stuff you want to figure out. Uh which is going to be difficult because what they only got the Rosetta Stone. It was only one stone. I mean, we need more stones.
Note that the Israelites that Merneptah claims to annihilate aren't actually associated here with the Shasu, so that's interesting. And of course, their God, the God of Israel, and none of these gods is mentioned here. The
Okay.
first historical archaeological link between Israel and Yahweh as a god dates to much, much later in the Iron Age, where the 9th century BCE Mesha Stele, Victory Stele, brags of dragging vessels of Yahweh before Chemosh as the Moabite kingdom rebelled and escaped Amorite Israelite hegemony in
Oh
the
wow.
region. Thus, it seems that southern Levantine nomads and raiders were associated with Yahweh, perhaps as a kind of theological toponym, and that by the 13th century BCE, an ethnic group known as Israel, at least to the Egyptians, existed in a similar area, and that by the 9th century BCE, the Israelite house of Omri seems to have had Yahweh as an important, probably as their national god, as opposed to the Moabite Chemosh, before which those vessels, the aforementioned vessels,
Hmm.
were dragged. Now, given the paucity of the archaeological record, which was basically that, what can we glean from our other surviving body of evidence? That is to say, Israelite literature as edited and compiled into the Hebrew Bible about the origins of Yahweh, or what we might call primitive Yahwism, or the cult of Yahweh before its assimilation into the Canaanite heartland, the Canaanite cult, and the
Hmm.
Canaanite pantheon more generally. Now,
Okay.
to do this, it appears that the best methodology would be to take the earliest linguistic strata of the Israelite literature as it appears in the Hebrew Bible, especially the Song of the Sea at Exodus 15, 1 through 18, Judges 5, or Devorah's Song, Psalms 18, 29, 68, Genesis 49, among other scattered memories of very linguistically archaic mentions of Yahweh and his cult. From this, a rough sketch of primitive Yahweh can be made. It appears that the deity's original heartland was Seir, Edom, Teman, with Mount Sinai actually probably originally lying in that region. Recall the Shasu of Seir earlier. That is to say, the northwestern Arabian Peninsula, just
Oh wow.
east of the Dead Sea. It appears that Yahweh was probably originally a warrior god, perhaps associated with raiding and women warband prophets. Further, the central manifestation of Yahweh seems to have been storms, specifically the catastrophic thunderstorms that result in the deadly flash flooding, which actually plagues that region down to this day.
Hmm.
Petra, the same region where Yahweh may have come from, was engineered around managing just those thunderstorms. Oh,
Oh wow. See, this is some good stuff here. And this also makes, I would say, this would this be like origins of like the flood myths as well? Like Noah and everything, or would this have already been, is this like pre? Nah, this probably would have been like around the time where they would have start like making the original, like, having those original stories and stuff. This is some cool stuff. I like this
you
video.
can see video of what those flash floods look like in that region, and they are terrifying. At some point in the late Bronze or probably the early Iron Age, the Yahweh cult made its way into the Judean highlands, likely settling at a cult center in Shiloh. This corresponds roughly to the biblical period of the Judges. The nomadic and possibly mercantile nature, note the mention of caravans in the Song of Devorah, which is, by the way, probably the earliest text in the Hebrew Bible, of primitive Yahwists might explain the diffusion of the cult. That is to say, it was spread through mercantile trade. This
Mm,
diffusion is probably overdetermined, however, especially if raiding were involved. Of
yeah.
course, the major historical backdrop of
Now, if they're doing a lot of raiding and stuff, I imagine some people just actually like died. Not so many times you get the raid villages and nobody like, defends themselves. So that could be happening. And then also like they're raiding places. I don't know if they're like making too many friends. They might be capturing people, adding a couple of people to the ranks, but I don't think it's gonna be like, oh man, we're just coming in here. I don't think they're coming in there peacefully.
All of this is the Bronze Age collapse. Through the 13th century BCE, civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean experienced a cascading systems collapse.
What was this? The flood is probably based on a super ancient myth. Yeah. Yeah. Like, and especially like the more I like look it up and stuff, like pretty much a lot of places have their flood myths. It's a pretty big thing around a lot of different cultures throughout history. But then another reason is because, you know, in throughout history, setting up towns and villages near bodies of water has always been a thing as well. And a lot of those places have like major flash floods, major floods that feel like the world is ending. Like realistically, if we didn't have internet and you just see a 25-foot wave hit you, you'd probably think that was like over for the whole world. But you know, I still there's a lot of myths and stuff out there. I'm not saying that there wasn't actually a great flood, but I will say there were a lot of minor and like major floods for a lot of different civilizations. So, you know, I don't know which one our flood myth is based off of, but there are a lot of them. I'll tell you that. I just remember looking that up and being like, man, there are so many flood myths. Noah lived in Mesopotamia, which is also the place the oldest or the other oldest surviving flood myths have taken place in. Okay. So yeah, I mean these are all by like big sources of water. I imagine they're all going to have some type of flood myth. But yeah, I really wish we could have like a year, you know. Of course, probably a lot of people in the Middle East were struggling with really bad floods, or maybe even a single super bad flood, uh, super bad one. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Honestly, like I wish we could, if we could figure out how to track floods throughout the year, we'd be able to figure this one out. We haven't figured out that technology, but guys, I'm working on it. You know, I'm working. It, it's gonna take some time. I may not see if it gets invented. You may not see my face on it, but just know I did bring up the idea here. You guys were there.
Real scary, resulting in mass migration from the Aegean, i.e., the sea peoples, imperial border regression and local hegemony collapse on the part of the various empires, especially the Egyptians, imperial collapse, just full blown civilization collapse for the Hittites and the city state of Gerrit, and generalized urban disintegration, note at a site like the city of Gezer. In fact, it may be
Mm.
that the conditions of the Bronze Age collapse allowed for the power vacuum in which one, raiding as a means of survival would have emerged, and a raiding cult headed by a warrior raiding god like Yahweh might have proven pretty popular in the chaos. I mean, imagine what kind of religions would emerge in the world of.
Guys, why? You guys see this, right? They're saying, oh, excuse me. He's saying because of a power collapse, within their system, you know, those ancient Israelites grew and like their god became more powerful. Everybody started being like, oh man, these raiders not that bad, they're actually getting stuff done here. We should probably go with them. And then they just grew and got more powerful over time until the point where they became the religions that we know of today. Like that's in the image. It's just hilarious, guys. I gotta start doing movie reactions again because I might want to see this. I never saw any of these movies that he's referencing right now. What are those like? I know like Mel Gibson's in the first one or something. I don't even remember the name of it. I know they just had another one just come out recently or something. I keep seeing the trailers for them all the time. I might want to actually watch one of these movies one day.
Mad Max or something like that.
Mad Max. Thank you. See, this is why people commenting that you're the GOAT. I think it and then you say it, bro. We're so connected already. Somebody go to his channel, subscribe to him, and then tell him to subscribe to me because we're already like mind waving through a video he made a year ago. Shout out.
That. Though this is just speculation, and that disruption in the Bronze Age collapse is probably what allowed the various states to revolt, resulting in Merneptah putting them down. But also, especially the collapse of Egyptian hegemony in the region, and this is very important. This would have allowed de facto independence, especially in the Canaanite highlands, because who wants to go up there? And it isn't surprising to me that Yahweh's cult and its military, political, state building wing would
Mhm.
settle in relatively remote Shiloh before spreading north and south into the highlands and then pushing west down into the Shphelah to contest eventually with the Sea People, who also got a foothold in former territory of Egyptian hegemony. This, of course, is the Peliset, as we know them from the Egyptian literature or
Okay.
from the Bible as well. You guessed it, the Philistines. Thus, by Iron 1, or roughly around 1200 to 1000 BCE, Yahweh had probably come to settle in the Canaanite highlands, thus marking the end of primitive Yahwism and the beginning of an incredibly complex process by which elements of Canaanite religious and cultic systems would be negotiated with both the cult but also the very divine person of Yahweh through a process of theological convergence and assimilation,
Mhm.
divergence and cultic antagonism, and especially early monarchic syncretism. To appreciate this process, it's best to explore this complex dialectic on two axes, one being the Canaanite pantheon itself, but the other being the progression through time from the period of the judges and through the monarchy's complex cultic relationships marked by syncretism in the north primarily, but more punctuated by Yalu monolatry in the south before the eventual transition to monotheism in the exilic and really the post-exilic period. So let's begin by exploring the dynamics of theological convergence and divergence, or cultic antagonism, with the Canaanite pantheon and Yahweh. Most of our knowledge of the Canaanite pantheon stems from the discoveries of vast royal libraries of the city of Ugarit, another victim of the Bronze Age collapse. What has emerged
Okay.
from this center are significant collections of mythological and cultic documents deeply detailing the nature, personalities, and mythic deeds of the various Canaanite gods in that pantheon. Though two caveats are perhaps in order. The first is that this trove may represent a specifically royal, specifically Ugaritic expression of the Canaanite theology and its myth cycles. The second is that these documents date to the mid 12th century at the latest. The city itself was probably destroyed around 1185 BCE,
Oh,
which is hundreds of years and
yeah.
still quite a distance away from the locus classicus of the development of the Israelite cult down a good bit southerly in the highlands. Thus, we don't know to
Man.
what degree the Canaanite cult expressed itself specifically in that region, down in the highlands, and this is especially true because the Canaanite written record in that area is remarkably poor. It's basically non-existent. So,
I mean, I just saw a video the other day. It was like South America. They didn't have like too much written language. I think it was like in Peru, maybe, where they discovered all these like ropes from the uh it was which empire, not the Aztec, the Inca Empire. And then they discovered that these ropes had a bunch of knots and stuff in them, but they were using that as a form of communication. Like they started it off with knots on ropes that they would just carry around with them, and they hung up in their walls and stuff. And it started off with like knots and notches that just like counted things, just like okay, this, that, that. But then they eventually figured out a system where they use different colors and different textures for the different ropes to signify different things and tell full stories. So now you can just pull out a rope chain from like your satchel, and then all of a sudden you got a whole list of all these different pieces of information that is like it's pretty much a book, but with strings and ropes that people just understand what the meaning of them is. It is so I tell you, history and people are so incredible. Like we over like I know written language and written history is cool and everything because we understand it and it's easier for us. But the non-written stuff, like or the other ways that people have used throughout history to communicate things is also incredible. Yes, that I can't. What are they called? Kimpas, the Incan Kimpas. Yo, those things are freaking incredible. You know what I'm talking about. Shout out to you, TTYL. You know, I hope I talk to you later as well. Let's get back to the video.
To what degree can we take the
Uh,
Ugaritic text to be representative of Southern Highlander cult? Not clear. But those caveats aside, the head of the Canaanite pantheon was the grandfatherly god El, simply God. Indeed, some theories actually have that Yahweh was a local, very far southern manifestation of El, but I think that's probably doubtful. Though Deuteronomy 39 seems to be an archaic recall when Elyon, a manifestation of El, parceled out the world, providing Yahweh specifically with the lands of Jacob Israel. This is probably a rare survival from a period where Yahweh was still kind of subservient to Elyon and before theological convergence with El more generally.
mm,
However, it's clear that the Yahwists were pretty comfortable enough with El to allow for significant amounts of assimilation of El features onto Yahweh, even when those features perhaps stood in significant contrast to the strident warrior of the primitive cult. One of the more striking features of these is the assimilation of El as an elderly, wise god. El is known as the father of years in the Ugaritic myth cycles. And
okay.
it's perhaps this image of an elderly, white bearded deity as assimilated onto Yahweh from Canaanite El that has probably proved the most visibly enduring in popular perception and art.
Yeah.
If you imagine an old bearded dude as God, you're imagining El.
Wow. That is crazy how things persist throughout time. Insane. Like, because I'll be honest, I always thought it's because, like, okay, they say he's the Heavenly Father, things like that. And obviously, ancient created world. So you just imagine him being old and like that. But I didn't know that, like, okay, they kind of like took one of those features, and it makes sense. But it just feels like, oh, like I don't know. I guess I'm just flabbergasted by how that has persisted throughout history. That's incredible.
Attached to this elder character is also El's wisdom, a trait not typically associated again with a warrior god. You don't need to.
What? Come on now. Warrior gods can be smart. You don't just you're not just like an idiot warrior out there just recklessly doing things. There's battle tactics. You got to be smart for that. Come on now. Let's not act like warrior gods aren't also sophisticated. I believe you could be both.
To be wise or smart. Further, Yahweh partially converged as a creator deity, but only partially converged. The name Yahweh probably just meant the one that is, or
Mhm.
he is, and was primitively not associated with creative powers. Again, warrior gods don't do much creating stuff. And the verbal form to twist his name, Yod He Vav He, into a creative form, the verbal form that we know as the Hifil in Hebrew, it never appears in Israelite literature. Thus, it's
Can we just say like s- warrior storm god versus nerd creator god? What do you want me to say to that? Is that not crazy? He just said warrior god versus nerd creator god. Now, I guess it's only offensive if you think calling somebody a nerd is wrong. Uh, I guess it's how you say it. It's like the way he placed it made it seem like warrior god versus nerd creator god. You could have said nerdy creator god. I would have felt better about that. I don't know. Uh I just it's just that nerd creator god. It just don't come it don't feel it feels like you're just like it feels like he got four eyes and he's just like now God's got like a book of like, just like all these like scientific books on like he was using them to create the world and stuff like, oh, what is that? A geology book? Oh, you nerd. Oh, what are you going to create Earth? Oh, what do you need? A book about hydraulic systems for how you think the oceans are going to work? Oh, you nerd creator guy.
Surprising that a great deal of the creative work in the Bible is
Oh my
typically
gosh.
associated with the divine names like El and especially Elohim, even though a name like Elkanah, El creates, never really appears with a Yahwistic theoform. We never get a Yahwistic version of that name. Thus, we have a situation where not only are elements of El assimilated to Yahweh, but that the early Israelites were even comfortable enough with a theological identity made between the two. They combine El and Yahweh. It's very clear in the Hebrew Bible. Thus, many elements of Canaanite El, though not all of them, definitely not all of them, as we'll see in a moment, are assimilated to Yahweh, or with the identity being established, the powers and features of El de facto become those of Yahweh.
Mm.
An element of this transfer, especially in the earlier period, was El's divine council, including a retinue of quasi-divine bureaucrats such as the prosecuting attorney Hasatan, but also the military leader, the Sar Sava, but also including the 70 sons of El or Elyon. Of course, these sons would also later become demoted to angels as monotheism took root before descending to earth to mate with human women in Genesis 6, and
Mhm.
all that gets developed, of course, in the book of Enoch. Though, like creation, this assimilation of the divine council was not total. The sons always appear as sons of El, the divine appellation there, never the sons of Yahweh.
Okay.
Though, along with these originally quasi-divine beings would also come an entire retinue of celestial objects, because the sky, especially things like stars, the sun, and the moon, that were all worshipped
Bronze Age era shrine for Yakura, the Canaan moon god.
in
Okay.
the region as well. One of those beings, Halel ben Shachar, probably Venus, appears in the divine council as a kind of insurgent upstart cast down to Canaanite Sheol, the underworld of the Israelites, and an oracle against a king of Babylon, probably Nebuchadnezzar. Of course, this character would later go on to become modified in Christian
Hmm.
mythology to become the satanic Lucifer in that tradition,
Hmm.
showing just how long of a half-life these beings can have.
Yeah.
That being goes all the way back to ancient Canaanite celestial mythology. Another interesting instance has a deceptive spirit, a Ruach Sheker, being recruited by Yahweh to fool some of the prophets to ensure the death of King Achav. Of course, Psalm 82 also captures this assimilation of El's divine council very clearly. He's speaking to members of the divine council, they're called gods. Perhaps the most peculiar assimilation of this to the warrior god Yahweh are actually El's traits as merciful and compassionate. This is
But you, Yahweh, are compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. In the cities of the nations, Yahweh, your El is giving you as an inheritance. Do not leave alive anything that breathes, utterly annihilate them as Yahweh, your El has commanded you. You know, I will say, I know those seem contradictory, but hear me out, guys. Hear me out. Life is like that. Sometimes you are a very nice guy and you have a lot of grace, you got compassion, you're slow to anger. But then sometimes you get angry and then you're a psychopath. And like you want nobody to be alive afterwards. You gotta do it. You gotta go all out and just do the stuff. It's like you ever watch an action movie? You know, I did a reaction one time, a couple of times actually. I want to start doing them again. But Rambo, think about Rambo for a second. Nice guy, super cool guy. Rambo was incredible. Uh, but then you get him into the woods and you try to blow him up and stuff. You get him set off, and then you realize like, whoa, this guy could literally like he would raid the village and then make sure nobody left out of there alive. Like you ever seen Rambo 2? Same thing, or First Blood, if they say. So yeah, I guess I imagine it more like that, where it's like you can be gracious and slow to anger, and you can have an abundance of love and faithfulness in you. But that doesn't mean it's like it can't get crossed. It doesn't mean you can't cross that line. You can cross that line, and on the other side of that line, things are different. All that compassion and all that faithfulness and abundant love, it feels like it gets thrown out the door, but it's not. It's just on the other side of the line. You cross the line. There's some lines you shouldn't be crossing, and this is one. So yeah, I can see the balance and the slight contradiction in these three statements here. But at the same time, I can see it flowing within one individual because I can see that within myself. And obviously, we all know we're made in the image of our creator. So I feel like this could be it. I feel like that's just it. Like you just have multiple sides to you sometimes.
It's an outstanding trait and sensible for the grandfatherly El, who even has a bit too much to drink from time to time. There are some great stories in Ugaritic myth cycles about that.
Mm,
And it is an interesting but reasonable assimilation onto a god whose prehistory of warfare and brutal raiding must transition. It has to transition when you go into a more sedentary cult where, you can't solve all your problems through violence anymore, even most of your problems through violence. Thus, this results in contemporary readers' whiplash reading the Hebrew Bible, where the deity there seems to absolutely delight in wading in blood of his foes
mhm.
and killing people. And then you turn a few pages later, and this is a God whose mercy and compassion never fail. That's because you have two gods being welded together here who have very different traits. Of course, not all elements of Yahweh were assimilated equally by the Israelites. One of the important epithets of El was Bull El, and Bull iconography, eventually all iconography, especially in the South, was apparently polarizing among the Israelites. It appears that the northern variants of the cult accepted El Yahweh Bull iconography, with Jeroboam I setting up very distinct bull imagery at his Yahweh shrines at Bethel, the name there, House of El, and Dan. Dan is the only surviving Yahweh shrine in the world,
Oh
from
wow.
antiquity at least, along with Tel Arad in the south, but it's mostly been deconstructed and put in the Israel Museum. These are the only two Yahweh shrines that survive into the archaeological record. Now, while this bull imagery might have been primitive to Yahweh, it's much more likely that it was a northern assimilation from the El cult, that the southern cult, by the way, preferring the ark's cherubim as its major cult symbol, but it was actually just more generally aniconic in its disposition, generally grew to detest, especially as the Northern Kingdom grew in power and prestige. And, well, the Amrides were very powerful, and the Southerners probably felt jealous of them and hated their cows. Indeed, the Golden Calf narrative itself may be a Southern polemic against the Norse assimilation of this dimension of El's
Mm,
cult, the importation of this bull imagery. Finally,
mm. Wait. So they're saying like the whole golden calf thing and stuff is just like the other side's version of being like, yo, this is what these guys believe up there. Can you believe they believe that stuff? Is that what he's saying? That this was just like kind of like, oh man, take a load of these guys, why don't you? Is that what he's saying?
El had a divine consort, Athirat, but I'll come back to her when I discuss Asherah in just a moment. If the relationship of Yahweh and El was assimilation to convergence, then the relationship with the Canaanite warrior and storm god Baal, literally the Lord, is going to be characterized by assimilation to not only divergence, but also just straight up cultic antagonism. The discovery of the Ugaritic Baal cycle has done more to inform our understanding of the local ancient mythology of that region than perhaps any other group of texts outside, of course, from the Hebrew Bible. Here, Baal is famous for his triumphs over the chaotic forces of the sea, or Yam, his fight with death, to the death, when he subsequently resurrected and achieved detente with Mot, or the god of death, with the aid of the fierce fertility warrior goddess Anat, thus providing for the life-giving winter rains in the region before being exalted as virtually the king of the entire world. Virtually every element of the Baal cultus will intersect with Yahweh and his cult, very probably because of just how similar the deities were and how very popular Baal must have been compared with the relative upstart Yahweh in the region. As I mentioned, both gods were associated with storms, especially for their life-giving rains in the region. However, they're both associated with storms of very different kinds.
Mm.
Yahweh was likely associated with the terrifying thunderstorms and flash floods of the southern Arava regions, whereas Baal was associated primarily with the coastal winter storms, without which the arid region would struggle to bloom. Both storm gods, very different kinds of storms. However, as Yahweh settled into the region, the motif of him as a rider upon the clouds, one virtually shared with Baal, would be extended not just to the thunderstorms of the south, but also to the coastal rains as well. This element becomes assimilated easily onto Yahweh. Numerous evidence of these storm theophanies abound, though Psalm 29 conforms so much with Baal imagery that some scholars have just kind of argued that it's a literal Yahweh for Baal substitution hymn. It's like cut and paste Yahweh for Baal, though
Really?
it's a little simplistic. Further, elements of Baal's contest with the sea, or Yam and its dragon Lotan, are mirrored in early Israelite Yahwism, with a similar contest, most notably in the third creation story of the Bible,
Huh.
found in Psalm 74, and of course in Job, where the defeat of sea monsters, specifically Leviathan, were a necessary aspect of forging the world from watery chaos to order. This is a pretty common myth cycle in the ancient Near East. Ironically, this defeat of Leviathan would be later transposed into a world-ending apocalypse in later mutations of the myth, both in Judaism and in Christianity. Further, Baal contest with death, or Mot, is often just demythologized in general, such that Yahweh has control over both life and death.
Like many Canaanite deities, death slash Mot would be demoted to being an angel or demon as monotheism took root. What's that say? The long half life of those
And
guys.
in some passages, Yahweh is even described as swallowing up death.
Okay.
This is a very big flex, an ironic flex over.
Let's just say, keep in mind, this theory assumes that the events of Exodus did not happen. Okay, yeah. If the Exodus did happen, the bull might actually come from the Egyptian god Apis. Okay, okay. So it may or may not. And he, if you guys aren't, because I know I may have looked at this comment a little bit late, but they're referring the comment. They're referring to um, the bull that we were discussing earlier. So yeah, this there's a couple of things here. Again, I'm not going to blindly disagree with everything he's saying here, but he's bringing up some decent points. I really enjoy his style. I will say the way he's speaking is definitely from a highly educational point of view. Um, so there, I don't even know if he necessarily 100% agrees, let's say, with everything. He just knows that this is where the evidence, like this is just what he, is like the research is telling him and stuff. So he may not be including all the points like the Exodus and stuff like that. But I'm appreciating this video.
Yahweh's power over life and death, because it's exactly death that's described in Ugaritic myth as having a gaping maw. It does the swallowing, not gods.
Whoa.
Further, the dwelling place of Baal on Mount Zaphon, modern
It's not that type of video. I can't make those type of jokes here.
day Jebel Akra, became metonymized into Hebrew as just the word for north, with Yahweh also primitively associated with mountains, especially Sinai Moriah. The title El Shaddai probably is just another reference to how a mountain El is assimilated over to Yahweh from the Akkadian word for mountain. Though eventually Mount Zion is eventually going to be substituted out for
Yeah,
Mount
he just
Zaphon
parrots
for pride of
whatever
place,
scholarship
but
he is
the
going over
metonymy,
to give you an
Zaphon as a
idea.
word for north,
Okay.
it continues into Hebrew to this very day. Of course, with both being warrior and storm gods, it's unsurprising that Yahweh would be pitted against Baal in cultic combat. It seems to be a video game. Baal's popularity can be seen in the numerous, over a dozen theonomic place names associated with him. These are probably local manifestations of Baal, akin to the way that Roman gods were locally manifest, or even the way you get sort of avatars of Mary in various places, Our Lady of so and so. And further, the horror Baal's worship seems to have inspired in certain Israelite writers and prophets. And further, it's also pretty clear that in at least the first half of the monarchy, there was a pretty strong attempt to syncretize Yahweh Baal worship, which seems reasonable, with Baal cultic objects placed in otherwise specifically Yahwistic shrines, probably to please both the local population, but also the exogamous wives for whom Baal was the central native god in their religion. The Israelites would marry outside of the Israelite group in order to basically secure international relationships like everyone else. Thus, this was very likely an attempt to assimilate Baal to Yahweh, just as with El in the north. However, the southern cult was never quite this comfortable, and purges by several southern kings, such as by Hezekiah, Jehu, and most famously Josiah, sought to completely deracinate non-Yahweh worship and even non-Jerusalemite Yahweh worship.
Oh wow.
They didn't even want you worshiping Yahweh somewhere else. However, it appears that by the 8th century BCE that the Israelite prophets, such as Elijah and Elisha, really rejected any form of syncretism, and the narrative describes multiple contest-like ordeals between the Israelite Yahweh partisans and the Baal cult and the Asherah cult, especially as backed by Ahab and his Phoenician wife Jezebel, who gets an unwarrantedly evil reputation. You can
Yeah.
hear, by the way, the Baal theonym in her name. In fact, the scribes of the Hebrew Bible so hated Baal that theonymics employing his name underwent taboo replacement with the Hebrew word for shame, boshet. Thus, names like Esh Baal become Esh Boshet, Meri Baal become Meri Boshet.
Oh
Even
wow.
the goddess Astarta becomes Ashtoreth, using the vowel pattern from the word for shame to muck about with her name. Further, the phrase Prince Baal or Baal Zebul famously becomes Baal Zebub, the Lord of the Flies, and even Daniel's term for the abomination of desolation, Shikutzma Shomaim, may become actually a pun on Baal Shemen or Baal of the heavens, thus that the heavenly is thrown down. Thus, Baal and Yahweh are probably mutual victims of what Freud called the narcissism of minor difference. They're just that similar. The stage of ancient Canaan and ancient Israel just being, well, too small for two warrior storm gods, and with only a minor exception, Baal basically vanishes from the religious record in Canaan by the post exilic period. Though, of course, Baal would go on to continue to function in the Phoenician deity system as Melkart as late as the rise of Christian hegemony in the late classical period.
Wow. Guys, do you think the world would be different if if it was reversed? Like if we were all like if we were watching a video about how Baal became uh the god of the Israelites, do you think the world would be very different? Like would life change dramatically if instead of Yahweh we worship Baal? Like I just wonder about that now. Like I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like, whoa, what changed? Like what if the assimilation went the other way? You know, would things be slightly left, right? Would up be down? Uh, would Democrats become Republicans? Would liberals become conservatives? I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question though. That's a thought. Comments down below. What would happen?
So
This is
One god
the
had to go, and
this is now
they
the call and response part. I'm calling and you respond. This is
in that
what
region
YouTube is about.
ended up being Baal. Though, while not directly bearing on the development of Yahweh as a god, but more so on Yahwism as a cult, is a question of how El's consort, Thirat, would or would not be incorporated. Asherah, she appears in the Hebrew, is mentioned some 40.
They didn't give her legs. Kind of crazy. They didn't give her legs or anything like that. Like, this is kind of wild. This is a wild image. Just give her some legs. She's just a top half at this point.
Times throughout the Hebrew Bible, though overwhelmingly in reference to a kind of wooden ritual pole that probably represents a sacred tree of fertility,
Hmm.
which in turn, of course, represents the goddess herself. Though
Okay.
there are a couple times where she's mentioned as a Pesel Asherah set up by Menashe. This is probably an engraved representation of her, maybe like those ones from the Bronze Age of her cupping her breasts, though we don't know. Unsurprisingly, the cult of Asherah was very popular, and it seems reasonable for many reasons. Fertility is popular.
Yeah.
That Yahweh El assimilation convergence would also result in consort exchange, such that El Athirat would become Yahweh Asherah, and that seems to be precisely what happened. Though, of course, not without some hella theological controversy. Several
Bro just said hella. Bro, I have not heard anyone say that ever. like not like ever, but you rarely hear people say that type of stuff. The world would be almost completely different. I agree. Yeah, it would be interesting to see if anything uh even changes. I love the different ideals between the two comments here. You're not sure if things would be different, but Sylvia is very sure the world will be almost completely different. And I love the fact that you guys have those different, slightly different takes, because it just really goes to show. I don't know. I think things would be different, but I don't know how. I don't know how they would be different, but I do feel like they wouldn't just be the same. I don't know if it'd be better. I don't know if it'd be worse. It would be different though. I'd be looking at things like if I could like transport to that other reality, I'd be looking at it like, dang, wh- where's America at? And they're like, America, we never heard of the place. You ever heard of little or Greater Britain? We're just Greater Britain for some reason now. But also it's not. It's actually just we're just Rome. We're all Rome. Every place is Rome now because the Roman Empire never stopped in this reality. But also half the world is also the some other empire that isn't as big now. That I don't know. Maybe that's the world we live in. If we didn't do that, what if the Roman Empire never fails? What if we do that and like Egypt, the Egyptian Empire takes over, and we got a pharaoh. Like now I gotta have a pharaoh instead of a president. Get out of here, bro. I didn't vote for you. But then it's like, oh, I was entrusted by God. And I'm like, geez. I guess that's true.
Israelite and Judean kings seem to have placed her cultic symbol in Yahweh temples, and equally stridently, Elijah contested with her prophets and the prophets of Baal and murdered them all, at least according
Oh,
to the
wow.
text, and Josiah targeted her cult in his Inquisition reforms. Indeed, it's the Deuteronomists, particularly, that have the most deeply concerned worries about the elimination of her cult.
Hmm.
Her exact status in this period is contested, while the two famous inscriptions at Kuntalit Adrud and Khirbet el Qom seem to indicate that her status was as consort of Yahweh, despite that pesky pronomial suffix, which no one quite seems to know just what to do with, and there is 50,000 volumes on that. One pronomial suffix. The overwhelming concern about her is the adoration of her cult object itself, especially in Yahweh shrines. It may have been okay with Yahweh having a wife, but not her cult object in the same shrine. While we have to acknowledge the paucity of evidence here, it seems reasonable to me that she did function as Yahweh's consort, but that this El assimilation was heavily theologically contested, especially in the South with the more emergent Yahweh monolaters. The cult object probably represented the goddess. That seems almost ipso facto true. It clearly became associated with Yahweh. The Deuteronomists constantly complain about it, and the logic of El convergence seems likely that the two were conceived together, despite, again, the general aniconic and Yahweh monolatry parties eventually that would emerge and obtain cultic hegemony, especially in the South. Now, to what degree Asherah and Astarte Ishtar were assimilated during this period is unknown. The answer is probably maybe. And further, there's a vague reference to a being called the Queen of Heaven, very disdained by
Mm.
Jeremiah. Who this is also unknown. Though the term for the cakes that are offered to the Queen of Heaven in that text there are actually Akkadian loanwords. They're coming over from the Akkadian language. So it seems like a nod in the direction of Ishtar Astarte assimilation, but we don't
Mhm.
know.
Guys, would it be crazy if God had a wife? Like, would that like completely destroy every aspect that you guys knew about him? What about just becomes an identical, unified, all powerful God like Yahweh with the same basic personality and principles and stuff? And maybe if all stories got in the Bible, those ethics could change. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Bro, I agree. like, uh, yeah. Now, if the Bible just has two gods that are both like good, like, as far as like what we would consider quote unquote good or bad, like if they were both just like benevolent being or not benevolent, but you know what I mean, like they were both just like beings who were just in control, maybe like working together, maybe like hung out or something every once in a while, like they were just like friends, uh but then like or like maintained a civil partnership throughout the Bible. Now that would actually change a lot of things. I feel like if that was the case, that would change so freaking much throughout history, to know that there are two all-powerful gods in like pretty much just helping maintain the world. I feel like that would have changed so many things throughout history where you're just like, well, why can't we get along? If Baal and Yahweh can get along, why can't we? That I feel like if that was the case, people would say if Baal and Yahweh can get along, why can't we? That would be like the most famous saying to stop every beef. Like, what are we doing here beefing for? Look, that squashes everything. If that's the case, from a classical theist point of view, God having a wife is impossible since God is inherently different from anything else. Okay, now maybe they're like slightly different. I mean, they can still be different, but then he, can show. Well, I guess here's the thing, because if God has a wife, I guess that implies that he shows more love to something versus another thing. Because if you're married, your wife is like, you know, now higher up than other people in your life. But God, I don't think God would want. I don't think they would have it so. Like I would imagine God would see everyone equally, but I don't know because there's if hierarchies and angels exist, then I don't know. Mormons do believe that the Heavenly Father has a wife, Heavenly Mother. Uh, they way they still solve the problem is by denying that God is eternal and the creator of the universe. Oh yeah, because if I remember correctly, Mormons believe that they become God after they do enough things in life and then in heaven. Like they're just like moving up the ranks to become God themselves and create their own universe once they die, they're like continue on until they move up the ranks to become their own and create their own stuff. God could have a theological wife like he has a theological son who isn't a physical son, but actually just God himself. Okay. So, like, God has a part of himself that is just kind of like it's kind of like it represents him, but into a second form. Now, this isn't gonna be the best reference here, but I'm thinking of Elden Ring. And I know this isn't gonna be the best. This is gonna be a horrible reference. I'm saying it right now, but if you ever make it to the final boss in Elden Ring, where it's like first it's like the queen, but then it becomes the king, and then also the Elden Beast. Now, I told you guys that that was going to be a bad analogy, but I made it, you know, because sometimes you just got to take that leap. You got to take that leap of faith, if you will, to make random bad comparisons.
With the exception of a few names, especially in very archaic sources, there in the Song of Devora, the fertility and warrior goddess Anat seems to play basically little to no role in this period of the development of Yahwism, and maybe just
I make dude bro warrior gods look like Elmo the
in
goddess.
the whole cultic environment of Canaan. Though the
Wow.
bloodshed imagery associated with Ugaritic Anat, her
Something tells me that's not actually what the inscriptions say on this statue.
wading through blood and gore and decapitated heads rolling about her feet and dismembered hands flying into the air about her like locusts. This needs to be metal song. Why isn't there a metal band called Anat? You see very similar kinds of depictions of Yahweh delighting in warfare and carnage in the Song of Devora, but honestly, I would just suspect that primitive Yahweh and Anat actually would just have made a better couple than Yahweh and Asherah, given their proclivity to massacring people. You get kind of natural born killer vibes from that couple.
Yeah, but have you ever heard of opposites attract? Like maybe you are a wild person, but then your partner is more like a quiet type. That happens, bro.
But I suspect the similarities are probably just endemic to ancient total warfare, hacking people to death on the battlefield, than any
Yeah.
actual theological convergence or assimilation between Yahweh and Anat. Of course, Yahwism would undergo further assimilation to Canaanite mythology, especially the demythologizing of the plague gods Resheph and Dever, literally burning and plague, terrifying gods who come to serve as nightmarish steeds.
The Canaanite Rephaim would also undergo significant mythological alteration in Israelite mythology.
Pulling the divine chariot. That is an image in the Hebrew Bible, more metal. Or the literary transfer of the mighty regal dead of the Raphauma of the Ugaritic mythology to the Rephaim as giants defeated by biblical figures as a show of force in the Hebrew Bible. In fact, I've done an entire episode tracing out just the development and history of the Rephaim from ancient Canaanite into ancient Israelite
Rephaim.
mythology if you want to check it out. That's a fascinating development with the Rephaim. All in all, what we have is a complex, non-linear process whereby primitive Yahwism and Yahweh become implanted into the post-Bronze Age collapse of the area of the Canaanite Israelite highlands, becoming the chief, though not the sole god of the emergent Israelites. Again, this is the famous henotheism of the period, and he becomes a core aspect of their emergent national hegemony in the region. The earlier period is marked by theological convergence and divergence, assimilation and conflict, all with the local Canaanite cults and their gods, with a tendency towards syncretism in originally the more affluent northern areas, but this earns the ire of both the southern Yahweh partisans who may have been already on the path or developing in the direction of monolatry and aniconism, along with a small fraction of northern prophet shamans. With the destruction of the north in 722 BCE, the northern Yahwist refugees would be absorbed into the more anti-syncretistic, aniconic, and Yahweh monolatrous southern cult. This would develop in fits and starts until the rule of Josiah and the Deuteronomists, whose reforms, or better, inquisition, not only sought out to eliminate non-Yahweh worship from this kingdom, but also non-Jerusalemite Yahweh worship. Again, theology and politics are the same thing here, and centralizing one centralizes the other by necessity. Hence the destruction of even Yahweh shrines in the region, like that one that was torn down there at Tel Arad. With the 6th century BCE exile of the Judean elites,
Well, some things never change, you know. To this day, when people go into places, they're like, "Yeah, man, we got to destroy the religious features in this place. Sam, what's going on, man? Hey, may not know much about what's going on here, but I'm here. Well, Sam, I appreciate you. Guys, if you don't know Sam, he is my buddy. We have done live streams together. He was with me for some of these Cavs games. And yeah, incredible guy. I feel if I have seen none of the video until now, I will have no clue. Yeah. If you haven't, if you're just now getting into the video, in like the last like 5 minutes of it, it may be a little bit difficult. You may have to like start the stream from the beginning to get a better understanding. But no, we're just kind of going over how the kind of like the name and the history of Yahweh started from its origins up until it got to the point where now we're like, in the Christian times, and or is ancient Israel times, and it's getting to the point where it is. So this is so far, and also this is based only off of like I guess like research and information that he's done. He's not, it doesn't seem like he's trying to put too much of his own personal opinion in here, which I appreciate. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm here to see what I can learn in the last 5 minutes of the video. Well, Sam, you're a good one. I believe in you. Sam's about to learn everything right now.
Who are probably majority Yahweh monolaters or even early monotheists, maybe. The theology of the exile and the post-exile would represent a massive shift from a parochial Judean God to a singular cosmic God with a clear expression of monotheism first emerging in texts like Trito Isaiah. Monotheism would mark the post-exilic period. Yahwism went into exile. Judaism came back. And that's a point I'd like to drive home. In my mind, the transition to the universal monotheism of Judaism would come at a price. And that price would be the particularism of Yahweh as Yahweh. Far from the primitive warrior storm god of the desert wilds of the Arava, or even the quilted together deity forged in the religious crucible of contestation and assimilation of the period of the judges in the northern and southern kingdoms, the theological tension would now be between the God of Judaism as a people, both sovereign and diasporic, with a truly universal being transcending all differences, responsible for even the cosmos itself, even abstracted to utter transcendence by both apocalyptic mysticism and Hellenistic philosophy. The distinction now would be, what kind of universal God are you going to get? A parochial Judean one or a more philosophical abstract one? And it would be the promise of universal salvation, reserved once only for the Judeans, matched by this cosmic apocalypticism and eschatological fervor in which Yahweh would become a father to a sacrificed son for the salvation of both Jew and Gentile. That would set the stage for the next part of this epic story, the transition of Yahweh from a Judean God to simply God for billions and billions of human beings.
Wow.
As I mentioned, the literature in this field is vast and highly technical. However, I'd like to recommend a few volumes if you want to dive deeper into this topic, and if this episode interests you, you need to by all means.
All right, so we got Yahweh and the God of and goddess of Canaan. Cain? Okay. Okay. The early history of God, Canaanite myth and Hebrew epic, and then Dever, Beyond the Text. Oh, wait. Beyond the Text. That's just William G. Dever who made it. An archaeological portrayal of ancient Israel and Judah. Okay. Interesting stuff here. So, I had an opinion. Be honest, guys. It's a live stream. I got to be honest with you guys. I kind of forgot it. Let's go back.
Story. The transition of Yahweh from a Judean God to simply God for billions and billions of human beings. As I mentioned, the literature in this field is vast and highly technical.
Okay, I think I got what I was saying back. Okay. So like people are complex and complicated. And I feel like some of the things he attributed to a simulation, uh of like, when they were talking about how like he assimilated into other gods the characteristics to become like the Yahweh that we know of. I'm starting to think that maybe it's just because people, and maybe even God at this point, has multiple sides to their personality or their being of themselves. So, like, one moment you can be a warrior god who's ruthless, and just like the nature of warfare itself in those times, especially, causes you to be more of a bloodthirsty person just to be able to survive, and that's what your people would need at that point. You are what your people are needing you to be, which may be a bloodthirsty warrior at points. But then, when the commotion's not raised up and things aren't going crazy, maybe you are super just like calm and passionate and forgiving and loving, and you are that person that has the wisdom. And again, I also want to fight back on the fact that a warrior god can't be wise, or a warrior god isn't naturally wise. I feel like if you are a good warrior god, you are wise. I feel like those go hand in hand. Like, you're not going to be a dumb warrior on the battlefield and be in a bunch of battles. I'm going to be honest with you. If you're going to be in a lot of battles, you're going to be smart. If you're going to survive a lot of battles, you're probably smart. We're not over here calling any of the other ancient generals, like, we're saying that they're very smart. We're praising them for their wisdom. When we're talking about, oh man, what did uh what is the guy name? The guy, not Constantine, but he brought all the people around the Alps, and helped defeat the Roman Empire, or help battle them and stuff. You guys know who I'm talking about, but I did a video on them as well. Uh, like, you don't see like ancient generals being called idiots. I feel Hannibal. See, man, this is why I love you, bro. You already knew who I was talking about. You don't call Hannibal an idiot or say he's not wise or doesn't have a incredible mind. You would say he does have that incredible mind, and him being a warrior like helps show that. So why can't we say the same thing about a warrior god? If the god is a warrior and he's leading people into battle and they're coming out alive and they're coming out victorious, there's got to be good battle strategy with that, or what they would call wisdom. So I would argue against those points there.
Nicole.
Also, if somebody made a new god right now and it was like you know in the similar sort, they'd probably have a gun. Like, realistic, I feel like if somebody created a new warrior god right now, that warrior god would be associated with guns. Um, so yeah, that was just a random statement though.
However, I'd like to recommend a few volumes if you want to dive deeper into this topic, and if this episode interests you, you need to by all means. The Early History of God and the Origins of Biblical Monotheism by Mark Smith is fantastic. John Day's Yahweh and the Gods and Gods of Canaan is a classic. Frank Moore Cross's Canaanite Myth and Hebrew Epic, along with The Religions of Ancient Israel by Tzioni Zevet, are all both and great. For a diplomatic history of Israel from a archaeological point of view rather than just the text, the aptly named book by Dever, Beyond the Text, an archaeological portrait of ancient Israel and ancient Judah, is very diplomatic and a fine text. Although his book has archaeology buried the Bible, it's kind of like the too long didn't read it version of the book I just mentioned. So if you want to read another one, that one's a good one. It's kind of a digest of the more specialized text. Theodore Lewis's more recent The Origin and Character of God, Ancient Israelite Religion Through the Lens of Divinity. It's also just a beast of a text, a magisterial approach, and well worth the effort. As I said, this episode is a testament to not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. This episode is incomplete. It goes way too fast over a lot of topics, and this could just be an entire semester class at the very least, and require sophisticated knowledge of ancient Near East history and several ancient languages, not to mention just an encyclopedic grasp of the Hebrew Bible and Canaanite myth more generally. Despite the myriad shortcomings.
What's this fun fact? Kind of related to this video. The name Hannibal means may bow grace me. That is a fun fact. The ancestors of the Carthaginians also came from. Oh wow, I did not know that. I don't know why. I don't know where I thought the ancestors to the Carthaginians came from. I'll be honest. I just never thought about that. But that makes sense. So that tradition would have been passed down from you know the guys we were just talking about all the way through up until pretty much the Carthaginian times. They probably, I don't know, man. They could have survived in some pockets to maybe to this day. Shoot.
Of this episode. I hope it's still useful for grasping at some level where scholars are on the mysterious origin and development of Yahweh, a God we all know, and
Yeah.
yet we still have to admit we know so little of. Until next time, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank you for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in
Hey,
history, philosophy, and religion.
nice. Guys, that was a great video. I really enjoyed myself with that one. So we're gonna do a couple of more. I'm gonna look for a few slightly shorter ones since it's almost 2 o'clock. Uh, let's see here. So the ones I have pulled up, but I guess I'll let you guys um, go ahead and choose because I think these were also both recommended by viewers as well. Anything we don't get to today, we will be getting to next week. So let me see here. Can I do which one should I do? All right, so we're gonna either do Deism Explained or Shintoism Explained. Which one are we gonna do next, guys? It is in your hands. Which one are we going to do? Are we going to learn about Shintoism or deism? The choice is yours, guys. Just give you a few moments while I pull up the videos. And also make sure you give that last one a like. That one was really good. Also, I'm going to look for the video that Sylvia requested before. Polytheism in the Bible. Okay. Here we go. Polytheism in the Bible. Oh yeah, this is okay. It's like a 42-minute video. This one's gonna be added for the next week's live reaction. Oh man, I gotta have a new playlist. Okay. Bro, stop it. Because I was literally just thinking about the freaking history of the world video. I don't know why I had it in my head. But then you literally, now the Phoenicians get down to business. Like, yes. We're synced up, bro. We're living in the same mind right now. Also mention the video after that one. Make sure to add it to your list. Yes. Israel's revolutionary monotheism. Okay, let me look that up now. Let me look that up right now. Let me look that up right now. Okay. I got it. I got it on the list. Israel's revolutionary monotheism is being added to the list. So that means next Sunday, the first video we're going to be watching is going to be, well, it's going to be this polytheism in the Bible one. But then after that, we'll be watching the other one. Because again, we want to get the longer ones out the way, or done first, and then maybe some slightly shorter ones. That way I don't know, guys. Like live streaming I gotta eat lunch at some point. That's gotta happen one day. I don't know if you guys know me, but waking up at noon my time or waking up before noon my time on a Sunday doesn't happen every Sunday. So this is like a commitment in my life that I'm starting to happen right now. The Phoenicians are also Canaanites, by the way. The Phoenicians are the ancestors of the Carthaginians. Yeah. So we were going over the whole now the Phoenicians can get down to business thing. If you're not familiar, Sylvia, there's a guy named Bill Wirtz. Now, one of the funniest creators, one of my favorite pages on YouTube. I literally got the notifications on, so when he drops, I'm watching it that day. But yeah, History of the World, I guess, is the name of it. If anybody out here has not seen it, I command you to go watch that as soon as possible. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. You got to watch it. Oh, you have watched probably 100 times already? Well, you know what, Sylvia? You got to watch it about 100 more times. Watch 100 reactions to it. See some people who never saw it before watch it. That's the real goal around here. We got to watch it even more. But yeah, so it looks like we had our vote here. We're going to do the Shintoism explained video. So this is going to be a fun one. This is by Kagito. Yay, we get another Kagito video. So we got I am familiar with Kagito. So we're going to have a good one on this. Let's see. Let me pull this up. Shintoism explained. All right, you guys ready to learn? We're going to learn about Shintoism. I don't know anything about Shintoism. Honestly, I think I learned about Taoism a couple of years ago, but I know this is going to be different. Okay, so I'm going to hit like already. I already know I'm going to like it. I already know we're going to love this.
This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to Nebula, a video streaming service made by your favorite educational creators when you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link in the description.
Guys, go to the channel, hit the link in their description for Nebula. It's a great resource if you're not familiar with it. It's similar to YouTube, but a lot more scientific, has a lot of educators with great content on there. Check it out. Maybe one day I'll be on Nebula. I doubt it, but if you want to add me on the list, contact Nebula and be like, who should be on there? This guy. I just really like his reactions. I just think he's really dope. He should be on there. And they're going to be like, okay, but is he like an educational guy? And you're like, well, I feel like I learned something from him. That's what you say.
This is a Tory gate. one of the most recognizable symbols of Japan, alongside the cherry blossom and this electric mouse.
What?
Torii are also a sacred gateway in Shintoism.
Why did Pikachu just come up?
And this electric mouse.
Come on now. I'm surprised Nintendo even let this fly right now, bro. They are harsh.
Torii are also a sacred gateway in Shintoism, the indigenous religious practice of Japan. Even with an over 2,000-year history, Shinto has never been easy to define. The word Shinto wasn't even used much until the 17th century.
Wow.
But Shinto has its own shrines, priests, gods, and rituals. Everything you'd expect from a religion.
Yeah.
But today, while over 80% of Japanese people participate in Shinto practices, only 3 to 4% identify themselves as believers in Shinto.
What? So you guys just like doing all the practices every day, but then being like, I don't really identify myself with Shinto. Like the craziness of that. It'd be like, oh man, I pray 5 times a day to Mecca. I wash my feet and my hands. I do all the things, but no, I'm not Muslim. I don't believe in that. Like what are you talking about? Why are you doing all the things if you don't believe in the things? Or you don't believe in the thing that is like, oh, this is like what we're supposed to be like. I don't know. I guess that part confuses me. Like, you can't do 82% of y'all can't be doing all the things that would follow Shintoism, but then only 4% of y'all actually believe in it. That's insane to me. I'm not going to be doing all the stuff if I'm like, oh, I don't even really believe in it, but I will continue to do all the things. I have my prayer mat and everything, but I don't, come on now. That's ridiculous.
And many Japanese people practice Shinto alongside Buddhism without any sense of contradiction.
Really?
So, what is Shinto? Why are sumo wrestlers so salty? And what can the god of hair do for you? Well, let's find out.
Well, I already have pretty good hair. I'll be honest. One thing about me in my life is I've always maintained a pretty good head of hair. If you guys can take a look here, it's not like the best right now, but it's also not the worst. I have a decent amount of hair, so I don't think that they're going to be doing too much for me specifically. I'm in a good place with my hair. In East Asia, Japan, China, etc., religion is more cultural than actual belief. Okay. Huh. I you know what? I can't say that like I can't say with their belief system. It's so, I guess, contradictory to the one that I believed in and grew up with and what I'm used to. And I'm sure you understand it. It's just less dogmatic. Okay. I guess I'm sure you guys understand where I'm coming from though. Like, it does it not sound kind of crazy? Like from from a more Western or more dogmatic society that we've come from, where it's like if you're gonna follow the beliefs, like there's almost no one from like any like none of no like Muslim, Christian, Jewish person is gonna be like, yeah, I follow all the rules of the thing, but also don't believe in it. Like, if you are just being a good person and you're saying, oh, I'm a good person, so I'll make it to heaven, and I don't consider myself Christian, but I'm a good person. Okay, I guess. But like, if you're, I guess the Christian rules are kind of easy to follow though. We got some easy rules as Christians, guys. Don't like murder or steal, listen to your parents unless they tell you to murder or steal. Don't listen to them then. We got some pretty easy ones. Don't be worshiping other gods and stuff. Like they're not super difficult to follow. Or this is actually how most of the world worked until Christianity and later Islam. In ancient Rome, you could worship what gods you wanted as long as you took part in the official imperative rituals or imperial rituals. Oh, wow. What? So you could just follow the rituals of the one that you were raised with, but then you could just believe in all the other ones, refusing to take part of them. And the main reason the early Christians were killed. Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense because, like, as a Christian, I'm like, yo, I'm not gonna be doing all your practices if I don't believe in the thing. Like, belief within the creator, I feel like, is a main staple of Christianity. It's like your actual hardcore belief in what you're doing, and like, you know, like kind of like what our God is. Like, I feel like that's a major part of it. But they're taking that part out of it and saying, like, oh, well, you can just follow the rituals and stuff. You don't actually have to fully believe in it right now. Like, it's not like super in the dogma that you got to believe in this stuff. So this is just an interesting take. I know this is already only a minute long, and I've already gone on so much of a rant so far. But guys, my mind is blown. You're seeing it. You're seeing it's like the meme. I'm like, it's crazy to me right now. This is the first time I've pretty much had to see something like this. Basically, you had to worship and sacrifice to the emperors, and everything else was up to you. Freaking insane, bro. No, emperor, you're not getting my worship and sacrifices when I don't worship or believe in I don't believe your sacrifices are doing anything for me, bro. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, I gotta worship you and I don't even really believe in you. Like, you're just a guy, and I still gotta worship my actual guy who told me not to worship other guys. You see the contradiction there. You see how early Christians would have really been messed up, because they would have been like, man, imagine trying to explain this to the king. You're just like, hey, king, by the way, I'm a Christian, so you're cool, but like, there's only one king, the King of Kings, and then they're just like, well, you still got to do the rituals, and you're just like, here's the thing about those rituals, bro. I don't believe in you. And they're like, you don't have to believe in me, just do the rituals. Yeah, but my God told me not to just do random rituals from other place. Oh, that's gonna get your head cut off. That's I feel like that's how they crucify you, and feed you the lions. Yeah, that's what happens. You're just like, emperor, let me explain. Meanwhile, the guy's getting the lions ready or something. He's just like, yep, not petting the lion. He's just like, yep, this lion looks pretty hungry over here. You guys got the crucifix ready? Yep, you're cutting down the wood right now. Oh wow, yeah. So you're saying you're not going to worship me, and you're just, as a Christian, you're sitting there like, bro, can we not do this? You basically just summarize the history of Christianity until Constantine converted and made Christianity legal. Oh my gosh. I hate that that's how that was for people. Like, geez, it's so crazy to me. All right, we're going to get back to the video. This was just a mind-blowing experience, and you all got to see it real time. So this is the beauty of live streams, guys.
In the beginning, there was nothing but formless chaos. Over eons, the lighter particles of this chaos rose and became heaven, and the heavier ones fell and formed the earth, which was then a muddy ocean. Between these realms, 3 heavenly beings, or kami, formed. They were followed by 7 more generations of kami. The 7th generation of these kami were a man and woman pair known as Izanagi and Izanami, who descended down to give form to the earth. Izanagi and Izanami took a heavenly spear and stirred up the ocean below, which created an island, the first land. Izanagi and Izanami decided to live on this island and...
Let me guess. Is that island Japan? Or maybe the island is China or something, because they know that they're come from, where their history is. I don't know.
Pretty soon felt the need to have children, so they got down to making babies the good old-fashioned way, by erecting a large ceremonial pillar and performing a marriage ritual by walking around the pillar in opposite directions, and when they met on the other side, Izanami greeted Izanagi first, which resulted in the birth of a boneless and limbless child, who they then very quickly put on a boat and pushed off into the sea.
Wow. Guys, here's the real lesson to that story, and I don't know if you guys caught it, but I caught the lesson immediately because I'm a good reactor. Guys, you can't split the pole. I understand that was part of they said there was a ritual, but guys, you can't split the pole. That's bad luck. That's why the first kid really came out crazy. Then they have to figure out, oh, why did it happen? I think it was because of this. I think it was because of that. No, bad luck. Stop splitting the pole. That's not a good thing. What's the view that I was using before? Was it this one? Was it this? Nah. Yeah, it was this one. All right, let's go.
Don't worry, he turns out mostly fine. He grows some bones, he becomes the kami of good luck and fisherman, and even has his own brand of beer now. They decided to give the ritual another go, with Izanagi speaking first, and from this union the islands of Japan were born, along with more kami such as the kami of wind, the kami of mountains, and the kami of grass. Finally, Izanami gave birth to the god of fire and died, because, well, she had just given birth to a baby made of fire. Izanagi, in his grief, killed the baby, cutting it up into pieces, which then became the volcanoes of Japan, and some other kami, like the dragon Watatsumi and the storm god and first sumo wrestler Takeme Kiruchi. Also at this point, there were some...
Wait, what was that?
God and first sumo wrestler Takeme Kiruchi.
That's an interesting combination of things to be. You're the first... you're a storm god and the first sumo wrestler. Interesting.
Also at this point, there was some human waste kind of just lying around, and from that, some more kami were born, like the adorable clay kami couple, Hanayasu Hiko and Hanayasu Hime. And
Why?
obviously sad and lonely Izanagi wanted to see Izanami again, and so he descended to Yomi, the gloomy, polluted underworld. He found Izanami down there, and when he shone a light on her, he saw that his wife was a decaying, rotten corpse. Izanagi bolted, which enraged Izanami, who sent an army of demons after him. But as he escaped the underworld, he sealed the door with a giant boulder, protecting the living world from the world of death. The obviously furious Izanami cursed him and promised to kill 1,000 people a day in revenge. Izanagi promised to make sure that 1,500 people were born every day. Izanagi, covered in the pollution from the underworld, wanted to purify himself, so he found the river to perform misoyi, or purification. As he washed, kami were born from the clothes he took off, and from each part of his body that he washed. Finally, he washed his face. When he did this, he created the most important kami, called the 3 precious children. From washing his left eye came Amaterasu Omikami, kami of the sun. From washing his right eye came Tsukuyomi no Mikoto, kami of the moon. And from washing his nose came Sano no Mikoto, kami of storms.
Wow. Guys, I have something to admit to you right now. The knowledge that I have about the like these characters here, it all comes from Naruto, okay? Now, I'm going to admit that right now. Everything I know about Amaterasu, I don't even know how to say the name. Susanoo, Tsukuyomi, it's all from Naruto, guys. I have to admit that right now. So if we see anything else that relates back to Naruto, I will have to let it be known. But just kind of putting it out there. And also shout out to Naruto for putting a lot of these names in there. You know, how would I have known without that? You know, shout outs to him. What the heck did I pull up?
This is a simplified version of the Japanese creation story as told in the oldest surviving texts of Japanese history and myth, the Kojiki and the Nihonsuki, written in the 8th century. This story introduces us to some of the most important aspects of Shinto, such as kami and purification. We don't know much about Shinto's origins because Shinto has no founders like the Buddha, no prophets
Really?
like Muhammad, or holy books like the Bible that tell us how it started.
What?
But archaeological evidence suggests that practices which could be called Shinto, like the worship of nature spirits in sacred spaces, first appear in Japan in the Yayoi period around 300 BCE to 300 CE. The word Shinto comes from these two Chinese characters. Shin, which means god or spirit, the
Yeah.
native Japanese word for which is kami, and this character, Do, which means way. This Do or way is the same as the one in Taoism and tells us a lot about Shinto. It's a way of life, a practice, more concerned with rituals and community than with belief, faith, or moral codes.
Mm.
Literally, Shinto is the way of the gods, or in Japanese, the way of the kami. But what exactly is a kami? Kami. To put it simply, Shinto is the worship of kami. The typical translation of kami into English is god or deity, but that's not a great translation. Kami can be spirits of the landscape, forces of nature, and the spirits of dead ancestors. Anything in this world that fills you with a sense of wonder or awe can be a kami. It isn't difficult to see how the ancient Japanese, living in a wondrous world of massive live volcanoes, surging rivers, powerful waterfalls, and vast forests, felt that they lived in a world that was fully alive and aware and inhabited by kami.
Okay. So this is kind of just taking the whole like God is in everything to the next level as far as being like God can be within anything, but they're saying no, yeah, these are our gods, these are kamis. If it brings you, this type of serenity or something, or if it's like extreme beauty in nature, then it's a kami. It can be considered a god. Now, question, guys. I don't know if anybody's Japanese here or believes in it, but could any modern objects become kamis? Like a kami. So, like, let's say somebody really appreciates a building. Could like a tower, be considered a kami? If it was like a really cool looking tower, or like something that was man made, but because like they're kind of describing like mountains and clouds and things like that, which are, and obviously not of man-made origins. Those are all things found in nature. So I just wonder if non-natural things that we know for a fact humans created could ever be considered kamis. So comment down below if you know the answer.
In Shinto, the physical world itself is sacred, worthy of respect, and you can have a relationship with it. So kami can be godlike, such as the sun goddess Amaterasu, but the concept also extends to other natural phenomena like mountains, rains, foxes, and earthquakes. Smallpox has a kami, and so does fertility, and growth, and rice, and even hair has its own humble kami. In Shinto, there is no one all-powerful god, and instead the universe is watched over by the harmonious cooperation of the kami who live in this world alongside humans, and generally want them to be happy and prosperous. It's a cycle of reciprocity. Humans respect the kami, and the kami take care of the humans. Kamis are expressions of musubi, which is the creative energy of the universe, and also a kind of spam-based sushi. But the spiritual, non-spam based musubi literally means to unite. It ties everyone and everything in the universe together, and so everything is interconnected. The landscape, nature, the kami, humans, all of them are considered to be always growing in the process of creation. Kami are not all powerful or all knowing, and are invisible and immaterial, but they can live inside certain objects in shrines. Kami can also have personalities. They can be beneficial or malevolent, and you can interact with them. This communication comes in the form of prayer and offering sacrifices such as food. The Japanese worship of kami is...
It almost feels like the relationship that we have for like angels and demons and things like that. So I can definitely see, like, this makes a lot of sense to me. I'll be honest. Like, this is starting to make more and more sense. I guess letting the actual video play and hearing the explanations is the best way to hear explanations. Who would have ever thought about that? I don't know.
It's a way to maintain a sacred relationship with their surroundings. While some kami, like Inari, the kami of rice, are worshipped across Japan, many kami are deeply local. like the kami of a specific village, family, or waterfall, like the kami of Nachi Falls. A single individual tree might even have a kami. For example, when the Kayashima railway station needed to expand, locals protested against the chopping down of this tree because it housed a kami, and so the station had to be built around it.
Wow.
Failing to perform the correct rituals or disrespecting kami can lead to punishment called shinbatsu, usually in the form of illness. Most kami are good, but some kami, like the Magatsuhi no Kami, the kami of disaster, are essentially destructive and cause misfortune. But luckily, Naobi no Kami, the kami of undisaster, is tasked with cleaning up after Magatsuhi no Kami's destruction. There are also the yokai, weird and wonderful, mischievous monsters that pop up in Japanese mythology. These can range from terrifying, soul-devouring demons down to the tofu kozu, a baby with a massive head that follows you around, constantly offering you tofu. There are said to be...
Who invented that one? Can we get the origins of the tofu kazi? Because I have a feeling somebody just walked around one day and like one kid offered them tofu. And they were like, why the hell does it, like, it may have been one kid and they just did it like 2 or 3 times. And they were like, why did you keep doing this, kid? You're so weird. You must be a cozy. You must be some type of weird creature of mythological being essence, because I don't enjoy you and you keep asking me for this tofu. I don't want the tofu. And then that's where it started.
Head that follows you around, constantly offering you tofu. There are said to be 8 million kami, which is just the Japanese way of saying an uncountable amount. Certain important humans...
I mean, not there's 8 million, so it's actually very, very countable. It may take a minute, but it's countable.
Can be considered kami both before and after death. Like Tenjin, a 10th century scholar who was so smart that he became the kami of academics after dying, and who worried students will pray to for luck in passing exams. Or like the Emperor of Japan, who from the Meiji period was considered a living kami until renouncing his divinity after Japan's surrender in the Second World War.
Wow.
Purity.
Dang, bro. America made a dude stop calling himself a god? Insane. Like can we get a like big ups to America on that one for some reason? Like, I don't know. Like the word kami works the same way as Elohim worked in ancient Hebrew, where it just means spiritual being. Okay. But like still, can we acknowledge that this guy was calling himself a living spiritual being until, World War II happens and they had to surrender, and America was just like, I'm sorry, you're a what now? And he was like, I'm normal. I'm a normal guy. Shout out to America.
Japan's surrender in the Second World War. Purity. If anything can be called the central ritual of Shinto, it is purification. Referred to in general as harai, the purpose of purification is to remove spiritual pollution, which is called tsumi or kegarai. This pollution is anything that separates someone from the creative musubi nature of all kami. Kegarai polluters include things like death, disease, filth, and blood, while tsumi involves actions like crime, murder, disrespecting your parents, and not smickety-smashing the lickety-like button. Pollution.
Guys, you hear that? If you don't like the videos here, it's tsumi. You have to like, you have to subscribe. It's literally right there. According to Japanese tradition, the first emperor of Japan and all ancestors to all later ones, Emperor Jimmu, was the grandson of the goddess Amaterasu. This is why the emperors were considered divine. That makes sense. That actually makes sense. Emperor Hirohito had to announce over the radio that he wasn't a god, and he did it in classic Japanese, so most of the population couldn't understand. What? That's so hilarious. That is so freaking hilarious. He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna say it, but I said it in classical Japanese. So, if you know classical Japanese, you completely understand it. But if not, then hey, keep believing what you believe in, man. Like, imagine if like the president came out and was like, yeah, I'm actually not who I say I am, but he said it in like an ancient language, like old English, not like if you go back to like 14, maybe 1300s England type of English, where like we wouldn't know what the hell that they're saying at that point, like you go back in time to like 1100, you are not, if you speak English like I speak English, you're not going to be able to understand anybody. You'll hear like the the words that like kind of mix, and honestly that probably goes for any language you speak. To this day, even if not divine, the emperor is still considered the descendant of Amaterasu, and so he is still the spiritual leader of Shinto. Insane work. So I mean, I'm be honest, I didn't know Japan still has emperors. I kind of thought they moved on to like presidents or something at this point. They're still using the system for emperors and stuff. That's crazy. That's cool though. I mean, I guess that's cool. Like, England still has kings and queens. They still got emperors and stuff. Why would they change? I did think they became a little bit more Western. So do they okay. Its traditional position, like the queen king. Okay. So they do still have like court systems and other regular stuff too. They're just like, we also have our representative. This is the guy who goes to talk to people. He talks to the foreign leaders when they come around to Japan, and it's like, meet our emperor. Oh wow, you're the emperor here. That's cool. That's what they're all saying when they meet him. Japan is the only country left with an emperor. Well, shout outs to them. I'm gonna be honest. If I'm another country and I used to have an emperor, I'm bringing it back. I don't care, even if it's just for like tradition, and it's just like, oh, he doesn't actually have any real power. He can't even make any real decisions. He still has to go through the court system. I don't care. It seems cool. And I'm not letting Japan be the only place with one, especially if I have a history of having one. Bro, if I used to have one, I'm bringing it back. How many? I mean, I know there's plenty of places that still have kings and queens. Again, England. But I guess emperor just sounds more powerful. I'll be honest. Like emperor sounds like you could beat up a king, like physically. It feels like you're physically stronger than a person who calls themselves a king or a queen. Like, you're a king or queen, cool. I'm an emperor, so by reigns of hierarchy, I could beat you up in a fight. That's just how it works.
Smickety smashing the lickety like button. Pollution is only temporary in Shinto, and humans are not considered naturally impure, so it's not like sin in other religions.
Okay.
Shinto doesn't actually preach you any ethics, and it has no reward-based heaven or punishment-based hell. In Shinto, nature is inherently good, and impurity is an abnormality that can be cleansed with a ritual. Impurity must be removed before interacting with a kami in rituals or prayer. That's why at the entrance of almost all Shinto shrines, you'll see a tank of water with wooden ladles. People use this to perform a form of harai called timizu. You wash your left hand, then your right hand, and then you pour water into your hand and use that to rinse out your mouth. Don't drink from the ladle, and for the love of Amaterasu, don't spit the water back into the basin. Spit it on the floor. More extreme versions of harai are called misoyi. Misoyi includes bathing in the ocean or even standing under a waterfall. Harai can also be performed with salt. In that case, it's called shubatsu. You can see this purification happen at the beginning of a sumo match, when the salt is spread around the ring to keep out impurity. One other form of purification ritual involves waving a wand or a harigushi over the thing being purified, like a person or even a new car, or over a plot of land.
Guys, I will be honest, if I was at a car dealership and I saw this, I would giggle just a little bit, just being like, okay, guys, you just purchased your new car. Time to bring out the person who's gonna bless it. Now, here's my thing. I would imagine that they purified it before it came onto the lot. Like, come on, guys, why are you so is it like, okay, I gotta watch you purify it, or else I don't know it's purified? I guess that's more of it. Like, I could trust that you purified it at the factory, but I kind of want to see it in person. Like, I don't know. You may not have purified it the way I want it to be purified. You may have started with the right versus the left. I don't like that. We always start with our left and then we go to the right. So it just feels crazy that they purified it like right there in front of her. But shout outs to them. Also, second thought, and I know this is gonna sound random, especially if you're not an American person, but can we start getting more sumo wrestlers to be professional football players in the NFL? Because the amount of NFL linemen you could get out of like every single sumo dojo is insane. Like, you would have the best offensive line in the NFL if you just packed it up with 5 sumo wrestlers. That's all you need is 5 of those guys. And the runs are going to be like 40-yard runs, 50-yard runs every time. I promise you, it will be incredible football to watch, guys.
Before construction begins to purify and bring good fortune. Shrines. The most recognizable aspect of Shinto is the shrines. There are over 100,000 shrines in Japan today, from the Grand Shrine at Ise, where the Sun Kami Amaterasu Omikami is worshipped as the ancestor of the imperial family, to the humble Mikami Jinja in Kyoto, the only shrine for the worship of Kamikami, the kami of hair. At this shrine, you'll hear the prayers of those wishing to be cured from baldness. This hair kami was actually a man once called Masayuki Fujiwara, who was apparently such a spectacular hairdresser that he became the kami of hair after his death. A shrine can be any place where a kami lives, and
they were like, yo, you do good, your hair, bro, you did the hair so well. Yeah, you're a kami. You're a kami. I already say kami. Yeah. You're good, bro. You're good.
Interacts with humans. So shrines can be architectural masterpieces like the Grand Shrine at Ise, or simple roadside shrines, forest shrines, or household shrines. Kami aren't bound to just one shrine and can be enshrined in a number of different places. At the heart of a Shinto shrine is the Go Shintai, an object that a kami lives in but is not the kami itself. It's typically a ritual object like mirrors, swords, and jewels, although one Go Shintai at a shrine in Yokohama is an industrial robot. They can also be trees, rocks, or even a mountain, like a mountain.
What?
Is an industrial robot.
No, don't just skip over that.
One Go Shintai.
Don't just skip over the fact that they use an industrial robot as a shrine. When did that happen? How did that happen? Why did that happen? What? Oh my gosh, I got like so many questions I want to ask specifically to whoever created this machine. Like, was it on top of another shrine that they were like, yo, did something happen and the machine saved a person's life? Or like did something, or they were like, yo, this machine is just so cool, it builds boxes, like it builds those little freight boxes, like they're really cool. Have you seen this arm?
At a shrine in Yokohama is an industrial robot. They can also be trees, rocks, or even a mountain, like Mount Miwa, which is the Go Shintai for the rain kami Onononushi. Shinto shrines are taken care of by Shinto priests known as Kanushi, and the shrines are typically surrounded by forests, parks, or mountains, which today provide large green spaces in modern Japanese cities. The most important building inside of a shrine is the Honden, or main hall, which contains the Go Shintai and is closed to the public. In front of the Honden is the Haiden, or hall of worship, where the public can worship and participate in rituals. A shrine also generally has torii gates, marking the entrance between the sacred area of the shrine and the secular outside world. You bow before a torii gate before entering to show respect to the kami. The most famous torii are the numerous torii gates at the Fushime Inari Taisha, the main shrine of the rice kami Inari. Now, you only have to bow at the first torii gate because otherwise you would just never get to the shrine. A shrine may be missing any of these features though. For example, Omiwa Jinja at Mount Miwa has no Hondan, since the mountain itself is the Goshintai. This is the most ancient form of shrine, built to worship the natural world itself. At a shrine, you may see a rock or tree, or even the shrine itself, surrounded by a ritual rope called the Shimenawa. The Shimenawa encircles sacred space, keeps it pure, and wards off evil spirits. A Shimenawa is worn by sumo wrestlers of the highest rank, as they are considered to be a Yorishiro, a vessel capable of housing a kami and becoming a Goshintai. Shinto shrines are all accepting, and so anyone can visit. When visiting a shrine, you first walk through a torii gate, you then proceed to the Kyosubachi to do the Temizu purification of the hands and mouth. To worship the kami, you throw a coin, usually a 5 yen coin, into the offering box. Then you bow twice, then you clap twice, then you say a prayer, followed by another bow to thank the kami. After your prayer, you can purchase an amulet or a charm for good luck, or even an omikuji, a piece of paper that is kind of like a fortune lottery that contains good or bad fortunes concerning things like health, business, and marriage. You'll see leftover ones hanging from trees at shrines, as people will leave behind omikuji with bad predictions as a way to leave that fortune in the hands of the kami. Festivals. Shrines are also the center of Matsuri.
Bro, if you're not going to trust the fortune, don't take up the fortune. Okay? Here's the thing. You're not always going to get the fortune you wanted. Sometimes you're going to get a different fortune. Sometimes it's going to be bad. You got to take it.
Or festivals. At Matsuri, you might see purifications, prayers, and food offerings called shinzen, and cheerful community activities like the makoshi, where the kami is literally carried around the community, sometimes even being carried into the ocean as an act of purification. You might also see contests like sumo, horse archery, and traditional performances like the Kagura dance or No theater. One large Matsuri is the Hatsumode, the first visit to a Shinto shrine or Buddhist shrine on Japanese New Year, typically between the 1st and 3rd of January. It is estimated that up to 80% of Japanese people take part in this festival. Some people even travel through the night in order to be at the shrine as New Year begins, or to view the sunrise from a mountaintop shrine. Festival goers enjoy the trip with family, friends, they eat seasonal foods, drink sake, and return old amulets for ritual burning and buy new amulets for the new year. A much smaller but equally interesting festival is the Nakisumo, or Crying Sumo Festival, held in May, where 2 enormous sumo wrestlers rock tiny babies in their arms, the winner being the one whose baby cries first. The babies then receive blessings for good health and fortune. For most
what's the origin of this right here? Because this sounds like a crazy tradition to start doing. People were just like, yo, who's gonna make the baby cry first? Oh no, they can't do anything. The baby just has to not enjoy the atmosphere.
The babies then receive blessings for good health and fortune. For most of its history, Japan has been an archipelago of belief, with heavy influence from across East Asia. One of the largest impacts of Chinese influence was the introduction of Buddhism to Japan around the 6th century CE. Buddhism and Shinto essentially fused together over the 1,000 years after Buddhism entered Japan, in a process called Shimbutsu Shugo. Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples were normally built alongside each other. Kami were taken up into the Buddhist worldview, and Buddhas were considered to be kami. This mixture of Japanese belief and general East Asian beliefs can be seen in this statement from the Edo period. It is each man's duty to believe in the kami, the Buddha, and the teachings of Confucius.
Wow.
For the majority of its history, Shinto was not an organized religion, but was instead the folk religion of Japan that was practiced with great diversity across the islands, alongside Buddhism and other beliefs. Starting in the 17th century, some thinkers began to want to go back to a hypothetical pure Japanese culture. They referred to this study of Japaneseness as kokugaku, or national studies. The Kokugaku scholars wanted to try and remove all non-Japanese influence from Japanese culture. In the mid-19th century, the Emperor Meiji took control of Japan, and Meiji wanted to create a modern nation-state with all the fancy things Western nations were doing at the time, like nationalism and colonial empires. He liked the ideas of the Kokugaku scholars and wanted to create a culturally united and pure Japanese Japan. Shinto would become a nationalistic tool. Up until this period, Shinto wasn't really understood as a religion. The word Shinto kind of just meant Japanese religious practice that wasn't Buddhist. These nationalistic reforms banned all combinations of Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines. Meiji also created the Shrine Bureau, which nationalized the hundreds of thousands of community-managed shrines and brought them under the control of the state. Shinto practice was then directed towards the worship of the imperial family, who were seen as the divine descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and the emperor was worshipped as a living kami. This state Shinto became the belief system in Japan during the first half of the 20th century and became a key aspect of the nationalist and imperialist direction that Japan went in before and during the Second World War, and so remains controversial up until today. After the war, the emperor was forced to renounce his divine nature, that he was not a living kami, which he kind of did. It's complicated. Another part of this was to sever.
It's not too complicated because somebody just explained it to me in a YouTube in a comment, so it can't be the most complicated thing in the world. What did you guys say? Yeah, he announced it, but he said it in ancient, an older form of Japanese. So most people didn't even understand what he was saying.
The connection between the state and the shrines. Shinto was formerly separated from the state and from state funding, and now the non-governmental Association of Shinto Shrines oversees Shinto shrines. That was very difficult to say. That was a lot of S's in a very short space of time. Today, over 80% of Japanese people participate in Shinto rituals, but still the majority say that they don't belong to any religion. The common saying within the religious landscape of Japan is Shinto weddings, Buddhist funerals. Even after Meiji's attempt to separate them, Buddhism and Shinto in Japan remain intertwined in everyday life. Except in the case of priests, most Japanese people practice both Shinto and Buddhism. Shinto rituals tend to be centered around this world and life events, and finding ways to respectfully live with the kami and other human beings. People go to a Shinto shrine after the birth of a child, or at a wedding, or for success in studies and business. Over time, Buddhism has taken over the afterlife aspect of religion, and today funerals and memorials are generally Buddhist. Japanese people easily combine Shinto and Buddhism in their daily lives. Shinto is still a practice that offers a way for people to connect with the environment around them and perform respectful rituals towards nature, family, and their community. Shinto continues to pop up across Japanese culture, from respect for dead ancestors, to Pokemon, to Studio Ghibli films, and to the nation's unique relationship with nature. In Japan, Shinto continues to be more than a religion. It's a way of life, a part of the country and its people. There's just something gorgeous about the landscape of Japan that brings about a sense of wonder and awe. Something that really hit me when I was watching Hidden Japan over on Curiosity Stream. It has beautiful shots of the Japanese landscape, people, and these monkeys who are just...
Make sure you check out Curiosity Stream. It's got some great information there. They've got great documentaries. Again, this is going to be a lot more educational of a platform than YouTube, because as you can see, all their creators that they have listed on here are going to be in that field of just educating and entertaining at the same time. And they're going to have videos on here that you can't put fully on YouTube, either because of monetary issues where they could, they would be able to say things on there that they couldn't say or do on YouTube, or have footage that they could show on Nebula, but they wouldn't be able to show on YouTube because of the copyright laws. So this will be a great resource if you're into a more educational field of learning and videos, but you still kind of enjoy the platform similar to YouTube. This is the place to go. Again, it is Nebula. Make sure you check it out.
The channel has
go to them. They're gonna have deals. You can watch videos. You're supporting the creators that you like on YouTube for free. This is just a way to help support them. But you can also download the videos. He's on there. He's got videos on here that you won't see on YouTube.
Nebula originals.
Yeah, a bunch of Nebula originals. Great stuff. They got quizzes. They got game shows. What is this? That's a guy falling off a horse. You get to try it for free.
6% off their annual subscription.
Now, guys, again, hit the link in the description for his channel. Go to Curiosity Stream. Go to go to Kagito. Then you can use his information in Curiosity Stream. So Guys, I think that was a pretty good video. The same thing is happening with Christianity, where Japanese people will also celebrate Christian holidays, uh, and even perform Christian style weddings. Interesting. You know, I guess I can understand it a little bit more now from the video that, like, okay, so if Shinto is their way of life, then I guess that's just where it ends for them right there. It's like, this is what we do throughout our lives to help celebrate, but everything else is more like an afterlife type of thing. They're separating the things that they worship in their lives versus the things that they worship and celebrate for their afterlife, which is interesting because obviously we know, like, as like in more of like a monotheistic, Christian style, Abrahamic religion type of environment, your current life and what you're doing in life and what you're doing in your afterlife, like, they are connected to each other. Like, if you're doing a bunch of crazy stuff in life, yeah, it's not going to be good for your afterlife. And you're kind of like, the rituals that you do in your life are helping prepare you for your afterlife. You're praying, you know, before you go to bed. So if you die, you go to, you're going to heaven. You're doing things like, if you're Catholic, you're going to a preacher. You're telling them about the sins that you may have committed, as a way to, help absolve you for your afterlife. So these are all things that, as Christians, we're doing, like, together. Like, we already incorporated our for life things with our afterlife things. The things that you do that will help you in your life also help you in your afterlife. But for them, they're doing it slightly different, where, like, things that happen in your afterlife don't necessarily, or things that happen, the rituals that you do to help, like, purify and better your life aren't necessarily the same ones that you do for your afterlife. Those are for the Buddhist and the Christian style, um, you know, things. But, like, for us, it's just straight up like, yo, what do we do for that? Yeah, so the difference is that most Asians do not see different religions as exclusive from each other and from everyday life or culture. Yeah, I can appreciate that. I do think that there's differences and stuff, but I can see the nuances and the relationship that religions kind of have within each other. It's one of those things where, like, I guess sometimes, like, when you can definitely see some similarities. Like, even with this one, like, with the whole purifying themselves, the first thing I thought about was like, was like Islam, and before you pray 5 times a day, you're gonna be, uh, just, you're gonna wash your hands, you're gonna wash your feet, you're gonna wash your ear behind your ears, and you're gonna clean yourself and do like a kind of like that similar type of, like, purification ritual, if you will, to make sure you're coming in there clean. You're gonna clean underneath your nails and all this stuff. So I can understand the similarities there. It's just an interesting. I just find this interesting. I'll be honest. I think this is one of the more interesting religions, um, or not even religions, but interesting viewpoints, um, in a video that I've seen. So shout outs to that one. Hey, Curiosity Stream, Shintoism, Kagito, they're all cool in my opinion. But on to the next video, guys. This might actually be the last one we do today, and then back to it next Sunday. Ancient Jews also purified themselves. This is where baptism evolved from. Oh my gosh, you're right. Oh my gosh, I forgot about baptism. How did I forget about baptism? I was baptized before. It's like the same thing. Oh my gosh. Sylvia, this is why I like you. This is why I enjoy you, bro. This is why you're always you know what I'm talking about here. You're always doing the right things, saying the stuff. All right, so last video of the day. Believe in God, but don't follow religion. You're probably a deist. So we're going to learn about being a deist by our good friends at All Things Humanities. Um, I have not heard of this channel. I believe this was also a recommendation. So whoever recommended this one, oh my gosh, I almost said recommended. Whoever recommended this video, shout outs to you. I hope you're watching because this is the time we're doing the video. So when this comes out later as just a longer whatever video, just in the lives, you know, if you recommended it, just watch there. I should probably like include the names of the videos in the comments of the live once I do that. So that's something I'm going to be working on. Videos. Yeah, so I'll work on that after this. But yeah, here's the last one we got up for ourselves for today. Believe in God, but don't follow religion. You might be a deist. We're gonna see if these people are really deist or not. I'm gonna hit like already.
When speaking about religion, attention is often brought to the 5 major world religions: Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism.
That's true.
These traditions dominate public religious life, and for that reason, they grab a lot of attention in the world. During the early 17th century, which is commonly known as the Age of Enlightenment, a philosophical movement developed where intellectuals, philosophers, and theologians saw moral and social problems with organized religions.
Mm-hmm.
Biblical stories were in contradiction with new scientific discoveries, and as a result, these thinkers began to use reason to attempt to understand knowledge of the divine and absolute truth. It can be understood as the religion of nature, meaning that one could understand God through reason, rationality, and an objective inquiry into natural phenomena. This movement was called deism, and in this video, we'll be looking to understand this philosophy, including its historical.
See, I'm not mad at that because here's my thing. And I know not everybody's going to agree with this, but like, you know, the church itself and then like the worshiping of your God, I feel like are different because like they just have 2 different forms. Like the church is more like a group of, in my opinion, it just feels like the group of people, individuals together, versus like your belief could be complete, like your internal spiritual individual belief could hit a lot different than it does when you're in a group setting. You know, you could internally, personally believe in something a whole lot, but then when you're in the group, it's like now I'm conforming to the group. You know, so it's a little bit different.
Origins, its rationality, and also its criticisms in the 21st century. I hope you enjoyed this video, and without further ado,
you're watching. My phone fell, guys. I'm sorry.
All Things Humanities. While deism is known for its prevalence during the Age of Enlightenment, where there were new discoveries in political theory and science, deism was evident in the early ancient Greek world. It was the famous Greek philosopher Aristotle who formulated the term telos, meaning purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Aristotle thought that the best way to understand why things are the way they are is to understand what purpose they were designed to serve. For example, man had the ability to reason, and therefore man should reason. This line of thinking extended to why we had purpose, inferring that the natural world is designed for human beings to live and exist in the world. The next logical progression was that natural phenomenon cannot exist unless it was created by a supernatural entity. For many world religions, this is the intellectual and, if you like, philosophical basis for believing in an all-powerful God that is beyond nature and material.
Or multiple gods who work as a consul, like a consulate, to make sure that the world stays, you know, together and right. You know, Shintoism. You know, you might just believe in a bunch of commies who all just help, you know, do different things. They all do different stuff and help support people in different ways, but they work together and then they, you know, help maintain society. You know, it's not always just one big fancy old guy in the sky, or you might think he's just a warrior god, who's ruthless.
However, in the deistic tradition,
Whoa.
the supreme being or creator does not intervene in human affairs and in the universe. As a result, we can define deism as belief in the existence of a supreme being, specifically of a.
By the way, this concept of learning about God through reason also exists in the Catholic Church. We call it natural law. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like using logic, I don't know. It's like the way he said that makes it seem like the other groups aren't using logic when they're believing. But I feel like all groups eventually have, like, if your religion is around right now, I'm sure there's a great deal of logic that kind of went into formulating and like keeping that around. There's definitely have been people who of every religion and every ethnic background have, they always had at least one logical person in their societies that I'm sure have brought in like many questions to be like, okay, but what about this part here? Can we figure that out so people don't question us about this later on? And then like, all right, cool, bam, add it to the books, add it to the notes here. So yeah, I'm sure using logic, learning about God through logic, I'm sure wasn't just exclusive to deist. It may have came off that way by the way he said it. I will be honest, I kind of got that a little bit as well.
Creator who does not intervene in the universe. One specifically often define deism as belief in the existence of a supreme being, specifically of a creator who does not intervene in the universe. Once again, Islamic, Jewish, and Christian belief, through their respective texts, all believe that God does have the ability to intervene in the universe.
Yeah.
For example, if you are sick and you're seeking medical treatment, the theistic position suggests that God can answer your prayer, intervene, and potentially cure your sickness. The deistic worldview suggests that this is not possible, for God does not intervene in the natural world. The most profound modern deist was Lord Herbert.
Now, when you're praying for God to, for a sick person, I guess in my mind, I'm not like necessarily praying that God immediately comes in and intervenes and takes away the sickness. It's more like God opens up a path for, that person to be okay in the end. So like, let's say somebody, has cancer and you pray to God for them to be better. Like, you don't expect that person to just, oh, you no longer have cancer. You don't have like, we found the cure or something like that. It's more like, okay, you pray about this person having cancer, and then all of a sudden, like, they go to the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, we looked at your results here, and this is a way we figured out how to treat this. If we work fast, if we can get to the surgery now, then we can take away this, this lip node or whatever that will help you. And that would be God's prayer. It's like, or that would be God answering the prayer from that, because it's like opening up a resource, a way for you to be okay, even if it's not like, okay, instant cure, you don't have a disease tomorrow. I don't think that's going to be I don't think that's how it works when I at least imagine it. It's more like, here's a way, a way if there is a way, type of thing. Because I mean, sometimes things do happen. Sometimes people die, and that also is a natural way of the world. We don't know God's plan is the real thing. So when you're asking for God's help, and maybe your plan, the thing you're praying for also is part of God's plan, then that way, that journey, that thing that door that needs to be open for you to find the next part of what you need to do has been opened. Whether you go through that door or not is up to you. So there is, like, as far as I'm aware, in pretty much a lot of, in the Abrahamic religions at least, there is a bit of like, you have to work for it as well. Like, things are never going to just be given to you as far as you just pray and then things are just answered. There are still works in that faith. Like it's all about works and faith. You have to do the work and also have the faith. It's a dual combination.
Herbert of Cherbury, a historian and philosopher who searched for the foundations of knowledge. In his work De Veritate, Herbert aimed to separate truths from experience. He thought that truths are imprinted into our minds and it's evidenced by their universal acceptance. So, regardless of culture, time, or place, certain statements of the world were universally true. For example, the act of killing somebody is morally wrong regardless of which country it happens in.
Yeah.
Murdering somebody in England is the same as murdering somebody in Saudi Arabia, which is the same as murdering someone in Indonesia. In the end, Lord Herbert created the 5 common notions that unified all religious beliefs, which were 1. There is one supreme God. 2. God should be worshipped. 3. Virtue are the main parts of divine worship. 4. We should be remorseful for our sins and repent. And 5. Divine goodness dispenses rewards and punishments, both in this life and after it.
Now,
according to the deist,
I think we can all agree that these are not. These are like the main things for. I would say like what like like again like Abrahamic religions, but like you go to like Buddhism and there is one supreme being and stuff like, oh, I guess they do have a supreme being, but they don't like only worship that one. They have a lot of beings there. We do believe that supernatural healings happen. This is why this is the way a Catholic saint is usually officially canonized. There is a famous case of a severed leg being put back 2 years later. What? It's called the miracle of Kalanda. I gotta look that up. Oh, I'm glad you're here. I got a question for you specifically, because I know you're in like Italy and stuff. I heard that a new saint was canonized recently. It was like a young kid. It was like 15 or something. Um, and I guess he was because like he was like spreading the word of the Lord through social media at an early time when like social media was getting started. I think it was like '07 or '09 or something. And then after he died, I think like someone prayed on his grave and it helped cure a girl or something of some like disease that she had. And then another person went up to it and prayed at his grave and they also got cured of something. I don't know what it was. But then they made him a saint. Now, I thought that was an interesting thing to learn about because it makes sense. Like, oh yeah, of course they're still doing saints. Like, why wouldn't saints? Like, why wouldn't like they wouldn't just stop making people saints after like the 1500s or something? Like more miracles would have happened. They would have had more people to worship. But here's the thing that I think people online are upset about is he's so modern. It's like he's wearing a football jersey, of like I think like the like national Italian team in his portrait. Like I think that's what's throwing people off, and they're like, "Ah, this kid can't be a saint." But it's like, why? Do you think like the saints? Like if you were alive in like the 1400s and you find out that a person that you, I don't know, maybe have known has now been canonized and becomes a saint, you wouldn't be upset about that, right? You wouldn't be like, ah, man, that couldn't happen nowadays. That only would have happened before my time. Like, no, it happened during your time, and it's happening during our time. I want to know how you feel about that, Sylvia, because I just thought that was interesting. Like, it just hit me like, wow, they're still canonizing people. Yes, blessed Carlos, Carlo Ostriches, not officially a saint yet. In life, he researched about Eucharist. Oh, like the Eucharist and stuff. Miracles, and after death, perform 2 miracles. Doing 2 miracles after death is the official process. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, that's cool. I thought it was cool that he is becoming a saint, and that like they're still even like showing the miracles and like having like the sainthood and stuff. I think that's a really cool thing, and like shout outs to him for being like, I guess, like the most recent saint, and he might actually be the youngest too. Like I got to look that up. Yeah, I got to look that up. I got to look up who's like the youngest saint. I actually went to his exhibition back in high school during religion class. Oh my god, that's cool. Hey, shout outs to you. Like, okay, did it have like a feel? Like, did it have like a certain feel in the air when you went there? Like, like, oh man, this is like I don't know, like this is like like it hits just like on a spiritual level. Um, what's today? Okay. So he actually, this is about to happen pretty soon, actually. This is cool. He will be the first millennial saint. Bro, I'm a millennial. He's the saint. Hey, he's from my generation. What year did they say he was born? I'm looking at this right now. They're saying he was 1991. Jesus. Oh my gosh. He was literally born the year after me. Insane. He would have been younger than me. Man, I really feel bad. And especially he died at 15. Jeez.
According to the deists, these principles of life could be discerned from reason alone and did not require a divine revelation to understand them. We didn't need God to come to the earth and tell us. If we logically looked at our human nature, we could decipher these ethics and act them out to live good lives. Deism implies that we can discover moral truths by reason and through our own conscience. While these beliefs were strong in Great Britain, they inevitably spread to the 13 colonies of America. Deism was critical in the thinking of Thomas Jefferson, who asserted principles of religious freedom in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Once again, the idea that man was free to practice his or her religion stemmed from the idea of purpose. These ideas became popular when humanity began to lose faith in organized religion, where corrupted priests manipulated religion for its own personal gain. Additionally, the siege of Constantinople meant that Europe saw the destruction of religious war and opted for a universal belief system, regardless of one culture's particular beliefs. It is important to remember that there is a clear distinction between the acts of religious institutions who do have the ability to act in contradiction to teaching. Deism rejects all forms of supernatural phenomena, including the stories of the miraculous in the Old Testament, New Testament, and the Quran.
Why do you have to denounce the supernatural beliefs? Like, why can't you believe, that those things also happen? He will likely become the patron saint of the internet. Interesting. The patron saint of the internet. Yeah, we might have to clean up the internet. There's a lot of stuff on there that people may not there's some negative stuff on the internet. That's honestly, I think we may need somebody to start praying to make sure that the internet gets better. Yeah, I don't know. The patron saint of the internet. That's gonna take me a while just to get adjusted to. It's like, obviously there's nothing wrong with it. It's just when you hear it, you're just like, whoa. He's the patron saint of what? The internet, you say? Like if you go back to 1999 and tell somebody that, their mind is being blown. Right now, it's just like one of those things where you're like, okay, it was kind of between that or the saint of social media. That's like the next option. It's like the saint of social media, which honestly, because according to deism, God does not interact, so the stories in the Bible and Quran must be false. That you're why did I forget about that? Darn it, Sylvia, you're so right all the time. You're right. They did say that. They're saying that they don't believe that God ever interacts with the world. He's just looking at it. He's just God is just an observer for them. So no miracles could ever happen either, right? Like there are no miracles, there are no divine, or there's no like divine intervention. They don't believe that Moses like parted the like. So wait, the Red Sea didn't get parted according to them. Like that never happened. Like he didn't get them out of Egypt. He didn't get the Jews out of Egypt with that. Like, or are they saying it happened a different way where God wasn't involved? Like, because I feel like in pretty much every way, like even if you don't believe, like, for them Moses never exists. Oh my God! Now Moses don't exist for them. Okay, all right. I guess I'm just like taking a bat for a second, because like, wouldn't that change a whole bunch of stuff if Moses never existed? I feel like that changes a lot of stuff. Like, how did the Jews get out of Egypt? Is that so? Wait, did the ark never get built according to them? Like, did they ever build the ark? Like, they believe the Jews were never in Egypt. Why? Why were they? So they were just never there? I'm pretty sure even the Egyptians would acknowledge that Jews were there at a point. Like, everything in the Bible is false unless proven by other sources. Aren't there other sources outside of biblical research that says Jews were in Egypt at a point? I'm pretty sure there's whole history where Egyptian, like even if you just read the hieroglyphs, they would have been like, oh yeah, there were some Jews here at one point. You know, we fought the Jews, or here's a mention of Israel. We were just watching a whole video about the origins of Yahweh, and they mentioned the Jews in Egyptian writing. They definitely interacted with each other. They were aware of each other. They heard of them. They like, why else would you hear about them unless they were like around and like you're interacting with them? They didn't have the internet back then. They would have only known about Jewish people from actual interactions, or like interactions from interactions. So it's either first person interactions or like second or third person interactions at best. They're not hearing about you didn't hear the freaking, Egyptians talk about the Chinese. There are a couple of mentions in the Hellenistic era, but not that much. Egyptians tended not to record defeats. That makes sense. That actually is true. But yeah, I mean, even the fact that there's some, but not much, probably tells you that, like, yeah, there were probably Jewish people there. I just feel like they're taking a lot. They're being like, you know what? None of this stuff ever happened. There was no flood. There was no parting of the sea. We can't back it up by evidence, so it didn't never exist. Like, stories mean nothing. If you remember, that first video assumed Israelites were basically just a group of Canaanites. I mean, that's true, but at the same time, they were still I don't know. I feel like there was a little bit more acknowledgement in the first video than what they're doing here, as like saying, "Oh, we're not believing in none of the stuff that they believed in, unless freaking." And I mean, I guess I understand. It's like unless science fully tells us that it's true, or I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're basing off this. Is this based off science? I don't really know. This is based off reason and logic. So unless they can logically think of why this happened, they're not going to acknowledge that this happened. Interesting.
Instead, deists believe that God established the laws of nature and then stepped away, for God had created his creation and there was no need for him to intervene again.
Does he look at it?
They believe that if God had to intervene in his creation, that would be insulting to his omnipotence, meaning that he really would not be all-powerful. David Hume, a Scottish philosopher, argued this in his Natural History of Religion, claiming that religion is a psychological phenomenon that arises out of the fear of the unknown. In 2018, the Turkish Ministry of Education report, titled "The Youth is Sliding Towards Deism," claimed that deism has been growing in Turkey while Islam is being repudiated. In the United States, deists grew from 6,000 to 49,000 between the years 1990 and 2001, and 12% of believers in the US believe in a deist concept of the divine as a higher power rather than a personal god. But that brings us to the end of this video on deism. Is deism a logical and rational position? If so, why? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to press that like button and subscribe for more content like this.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It feels a little bit too logical and rational for me. I don't know if that makes sense. Modern secular culture is basically identical to deism / atheism, since both secularism and deism go back to the age of enlightenment. That's true. I can see a lot of like people who are like on the verge of being an atheist becoming like a deist, like, oh man, I still believe in something, but like it does feel a little bit more closer to the atheist side of the spectrum than like the Christian one. So I mean, I don't know. I guess it was just a lot for me to kind of like be like, oh, well, you guys freaking don't believe in none of the stuff. That's kind of crazy. You can believe in some of the stuff at least. Jeez. But I guess that it is what that is there. This was a good time though. I think we had a pretty good time with this stream today. I feel like I was gonna say one more thing here. My mind is like getting away from me. But no, that I feel like it's a little bit too logical. I think one thing about the world we have to realize is that life and the way the world works is not just like straight like this logic. Like sometimes in life things are a little bit loopy. Things kind of go all around everywhere. And that's kind of how I feel about it, like it can't just be too straightforward of a thing, because that's just, oh man, God did this, so it makes this. Like, no, sometimes God just opens up a door, you still got to walk through it. Sometimes a window opens up and you gotta jump out. It just is what it is for me. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. But yeah, guys, we had a good time today. Did you guys have a good time? I think I had a good time. By the way, if you want to know more about more saints, you could also add to the list Douay Ruse. Okay. The timeline of 250 Catholic saints. Let me look that up now. Hey, there it is. Let's see the video. Add it to the playlist. Religious live reactions. Bam. Cool. What? Okay. All right, I might also watch this video about all the popes of the Catholic Church next week as well. That actually seems kind of interesting. The Phantom Time. Okay, I'm starting to see a lot of videos here that may be kind of interesting. Hey, shout out to you, bro. Good to have this on before work. Yes, I'm glad I was able to entertain you guys before work or after work or however you guys were watching this whenever. Yeah, I actually had a good time. First religious live stream that I've done, but hopefully this will be the first of many. I'll definitely try to do one next week. Now, here's the problem with next week. Next Sunday is my mother's birthday. So June 9th, my mom, she is her birthday. So we're going to go ahead and give a shout out to her, but I may actually be hanging out with my mom, but I will try to make sure something comes out for next Sunday, or I'll be doing a live. So if it's a little bit later, it might be a little bit later, just because again, I know we're going out and we're probably gonna go to like a comedy show on Saturday because my mom likes comedy. We're gonna go see a comedian, and go out to dinner and everything. But I don't know. She may want to do something on her actual birthday. She is my mother. I do love her. Ma, if you're watching, shout outs to you. I love you. So, next Sunday, it might be the Sunday after next Sunday is the next live, but just know more of these are coming. More of these are going to be on the way because we had a really good time. We already got some recommendations. And then, yeah. So, guys, if you made it this far, I want to say thank you. As always, I love you. And I'll see you hopefully next week, guys. But until I see you, bye.